Chapter 1933. With the release of Han Fei's aura and the appearance of the third king of the flying feather heavens, the friendly relationship between them turned into a battle state. The main reason was that Han Fei was too domineering, directly suppressing Xie Yu and Li Yingtian. After all, in the eyes of cultivators, the strongest fist was the most important thing. If Han Fei only had the means of persuasion, it wouldn't be effective no matter how hard he tried. This was the principle that Han Fei followed. Since he couldn't convince them, he would beat them until they were convinced. He came here to seek power. If they refused to give him power, he could rob them of it. Who could stop him? Xie Yu shouted, "Brother Han, if you want to try, let's try." Of course, they didn't fight in the sky above the flying feather heavens. The battle between the four kings would be earth-shattering. The flying feather heavens certainly couldn't bear it. Fortunately, Han Fei only said he would suppress them, not kill them, so there was still some room for negotiation. In the void. Swish, swish, swish. 3 people and 1 eagle fought in the void. Xie Yu roared, "Fuse!" Han Fei saw an enormous manta ray crawl into Xie Yu's body. His wings changed, turning black and gold, and a pair of bone blades were grasped in his hands. A giant wind-shaped bird appeared under Li Yingtian, and in his hand, a pair of scissors was grasped. Li Yingtian shouted, "I'd like to see how strong you are to suppress the 3 kings." Scorching sun scissors. Wherever the scorching sun passes, everything will be cut. Han Fei found that his body began to burn, and a scorching sun in the void locked his position like a mirror. These people had been together for tens of thousands of years, so their teamwork was naturally good. In the void, when a huge pair of fire scissors with a scorching sun locked on him, Xie Yu's 2 bone blades extended infinitely like vines, as if they had become 2 bone whips. Han Fei felt that his blood was being stimulated. These bone blades seemed to have the power to stimulate blood. Once they pierced through him, they would draw blood continuously. At this moment, the 2 bone blades crossed and blocked his way out. The storm dragon eagle flapped its wings. Thousand feather fusion / Han Fei thought to himself, it seems that the storm dragon eagle in the Pioneer Sea realm has more means. 1,000 feathers combined into one, like a sword piercing the sky, is really impressive. However, Han Fei just praised it for a while. When the so-called scorching sun scissors was about to pinch Han Fei, Li Yingtian couldn't help but hesitate, wondering why this guy didn't fight back. But in the next moment, with 2 clangs, in the attack enveloped by the scorching sun, Han Fei's hands, one on the left and one on the right, directly clasped the scissors. Li Yingtian's expression changed drastically. The pair of scissors was as red as a soldering iron, and its temperature had reached an extremely high level. However, Han Fei didn't care and resisted with his body. Bang! The scissors were pulled apart by Han Fei, and the shadow was broken. The 2 bone blades behind him were so sharp that Han Fei could feel their piercing power even from a long distance away. Hundreds of strange arrays appeared behind Han Fei, and after the arrays merged, a big shield appeared behind him. Clang, clanged when the bone blades stabbed at him. Han Fei didn't even look back but raised his hand and opened his palm at the knife light of the 1,000-feather fusion / in the sky. Clanged. Han Fei pinched the knife light with one hand, clasped his 5 fingers, and suddenly grabbed it. With a bang, the fierce / collapsed in an instant. Hiss, it was just a tentative attack, but Xie Yu, Li Yingtian, and the storm dragon eagle were all dumbfounded. Is he still a fucking human? The 3 of them burst out several ultimate techniques, but they couldn't even break this guy's body. The other party was able to destroy his power attack with just a casual grab? It was also at this moment that the 3 of them seemed to realize why Han Fei had the confidence and capital to challenge the Grand Pure Wuji. This kind of strength was really frightening to look at. Li Yingtian shouted, "No need to probe. Just attack, great wind and scorching sun explosion." In the blink of an eye, Li Yingtian opened a big hole in the void, and a dazzling sun and essence fire rushed into the void like a pillar. And the phantom bird under Li Yingtian flapped its wings, and in the void, a storm followed. In the outside world, Luo Xiaobai and the others, who had just been entertained by some half-king realm powerhouses, suddenly looked up at the sky. The void fire pillar that suddenly appeared was obviously not Han Fei's means. Zhang Xuanyu couldn't help but say, "It seems that we have to use force." I told him that if he could use force to suppress people, why would he try to persuade the sea demons? Lu Renkuang added, "I knew it would be like this. Han Fei has a bad temper and always fights whenever he disagrees with him." Luo Xiaobai nodded slightly. Fortunately, it doesn't affect the overall situation. Compared with the crew of the Avenger, the people of the Flying Feather Heavens and the Lawless Heavens were not so calm. Many people secretly activated their power, so that if anything unexpected happened, they could take action in time. In the void, when wind and fire merged, a majestic sea of fire directly burned Han Fei and enveloped him. That kind of scorching flame was no longer an ordinary flame, but a flame that had been condensed and endowed with the great Tao of fire. With such little strength, you want to live in seclusion? How long has it been since you went out? Do you know how many strong masters there are in the chaotic azure sea now? Han Fei walked out of the flames, his body shining with golden light. He didn't look like he was roasted at all. Secret method. Xie Yu and the Storm Dragon Eagle immediately used their secret method. He could only see the shadow of a claw in half of the sky. It seemed to be the Storm Dragon Eagle's strongest attack. When the eagle claw clawed at Han Fei, Xie Yu held the longbow, which had already exploded 9 times in a row, which seemed to contain an extremely terrifying attack. Facing their attacks, Han Fei raised his hand and pointed. The Great Tao Convergent Sword. As soon as the sword was drawn, light illuminated the void, and the eagle claw collapsed. Han Fei sensed that the strength of this Storm Dragon Eagle was at most similar to that of the Crazy Four Kings. In fact, it should be a bit weaker than the Crazy Four Kings. As for Li Yingtian, his great Tao was useless against Han Fei. In the case that he was not affected, Li Yingtian was the weakest in Han Fei's eyes. With the secret method, it was hard to say whether his strength was comparable to Feng Xinlan of the Glass Sky. The last one, behind Xie Yu, was a black shadow thousands of feet high. Han Fei watched the huge manta ray open its mouth and absorb the power between heaven and earth. Pop! The manta ray spat out power, and the arrow shot out. Han Fei saw a dragon roar coming out of the arrow, and a blue phoenix flying around the arrow. The void shattered layer after layer, and in the blink of an eye, it was in front of him. Han Fei suddenly raised his head, and with a sudden surge of energy, he stretched out one hand and directly caught this extremely fierce arrow. This arrow pushed Han Fei back more than 10 miles. Han Fei seemed to be almost pierced by the dragon shadow and the phoenix shadow, but in fact he was still intact. At this moment, Han Fei held the arrow in his hand, trying to push the arrow forward an inch. Seeing the arrow struggling, Han Fei stretched out his hands and suddenly bent. Crack! The arrow was shattered, and the power surged for hundreds of thousands of miles. Xie Yu was shocked. Even this didn't work? Catching the arrow with his bare hands, was he really a pioneer sea-state powerhouse? Han Fei sighed leisurely. With your strength, it's really hard for you to survive in the chaotic ocean sea to this day. You're a bit weak, but if you can trust me, there may be a turning point in the future. Your attacks are all over, aren't they? Isn't it my turn now? Suddenly, the faces of Li Yingtian, Xie Yu, and the Storm Dragon Eagle changed drastically. Han Fei punched out 3 times in a row, and the fist marks rumbled and contained terrifying murderous intent. Xie Yu tried his best and shot 99 arrows in a row, but he still couldn't destroy Han Fei's attack. Li Yingtian's scorching sun scissors tried to break Han Fei's punch. However, the moment the scorching sun scissors touched the sacrificing punch, it was stopped and couldn't even close. As for the Storm Golden Condor, it activated the Void Storm and managed to kill the punch with the power of the Void Storm. However, when it turned its head, it found that Han Fei was standing on its head at some point. At this moment, Han Fei put his hands behind his back and said leisurely, "You're so weak. The power you've been pursuing your whole life is so vulnerable. Let me put it this way. With your current strength, if you want to break through the heavens and become a monarch, it's practically a pipe dream. But if I reorganize the human race, maybe you'll have a bright future." Xie Yu and Li Yingtian were both sent flying 1,000 miles by Han Fei and barely made it back, covered in blood. With a thought, Xie Yu looked at Li Yingtian and the storm dragon eagle. With Han Fei's strength, they didn't need to ask for trouble at all. Cough, cough, Xie Yu said, "Thank you for your mercy, Brother Han. If the battle starts in the future, the flying feather heavens and the lawless heavens will certainly help. We'll take action when it's time." Han Fei threw out 3 jade slips casually and said, "When the jade slips shatter, it's when I need people. I won't use you easily until I can clearly resist and defeat a heaven-opening state expert." At this point, what else could Xie Yu and Li Yingtian say? As long as he was willing, he could destroy the flying feather heavens with his bare hands. Even if the 3 of them joined forces, they had no chance of winning. At this time, they had no choice but to submit. Han Fei muttered in a voice that only he could hear, "You're asking for a beating." Chapter 1934. Although Han Fei was ready to suppress them with force, he still wanted to ask for their opinion every time. Unfortunately, the long years had worn away their fighting spirit. The arrival of the Avenger was not widely publicized. The only unusual thing was the explanation that the sun essence fire could penetrate the void. To the public, it was just that the kings were cultivating. In the flying feather heavens, Han Fei scanned this place with his perception and found that there were not many venerable realm experts here. The flying feather heavens and the shadowless heavens only had about 600 people in total, and only 7 or 8 more of them had reached the half-king realm than the Avenger. After the battle, Xie Yu and Li Yingtian became more polite to Han Fei. Li Yingtian even said, "Brother Han, when do you think we should rebuild the heavenly desolate city? We just need to find a floating island. The arrays on the floating island should be taught by every immortal palace. I think you know how to do it, Brother Han." Han Fei said, "No hurry. Since the ashen sky still exists, the heavenly desolate city will be rebuilt. When the ashen sky really returns, I will rebuild the heavenly desolate city." Hearing this, Li Yingtian agreed with Han Fei. If Han Fei hadn't mentioned it, he would have forgotten that the heavenly desolate city was his main city. Now that Xie Yu and Li Yingtian had been convinced, Han Fei wouldn't stay any longer. It had been almost 21 years since he left the Yin-Yang heaven. It was time to go back. Half a month later, on the Avenger, Xia Xiaochan and Han Fei sat on the mast, and Xia Xiaochan said, "When will the heavenly desolate city be rebuilt? If it's a floating island, I know that there are seabed floating stones in the Mist Sea." Han Fei said with a smile, "Do you remember what Li Huang shouted to us?" Xia Xiaochan nodded. "When the heavenly desolate city is rebuilt, I will return to the immortal palace." Xia Xiaochan couldn't help tilting her head. Now that I think about it, although Li Huang's combat power was strong at that time, he was at most a venerable, wasn't he? Han Fei shook his head. "I think so. But maybe he was just seriously injured at that time and couldn't exert his peak strength? Or maybe Tianhuang City fell and all the experts were killed. Li Huang was the last venerable, so he roared like that before he died." Xia Xiaochan said, "I really don't understand why human beings have the time to engage in such messy internal strife when they are suffering from both internal and external troubles." Han Fei shook his head helplessly. He could only say that the treasures they found in the imperial palace were very tempting. After all, back then when they weren't kings yet, they had suddenly become more than 100 kings. Later on, these monarchs entered the Arch Palace again. Although more than half of them were lost, they found a way to build 36 immortal palaces. For better or for worse, every family managed to get their hands on an exceptional path that they could walk on for a long time. As for going to the Arch Palace again, most of these monarchs didn't dare to go there anymore. Perhaps some had been there before, but no one said anything. As for whether that heaven-opening expert was related to the imperial palace, no one could say for sure. In short, the resources inside the Arch Palace were precious. Any random treasure was enough to cause a bloodbath in the chaotic vast sea for tens of thousands of years. Suddenly, Song Kaiyuan appeared on the deck with a broken jade in his hand and an ugly expression on his face. Han Fei frowned. "What happened?" Song Kaiyuan said, "Something might have happened in the chaotic vast sea." This is a secret warning talisman of our Taishin heaven. Only when a major problem occurs in our Taishin palace will this secret talisman break to warn the disciples outside to protect their own safety. Han Fei's eyes turned cold. Taishin heaven had been in the inner territory for tens of thousands of years. With the sword god palace, who dared to touch them? But even so, something had gone wrong. It was only a little more than a year before the Arch Palace opened. Han Fei's expression immediately changed. 10-color sky, let's go back. But Han Fei made a prompt decision. He spread out his perception and transmitted his voice to the crew members of the Avenger who were training in all directions. Everyone, return to the chaotic vast sea. In the 13 years since they came out of Jiugong heaven, the Avenger pirates seemed to have disappeared from the chaotic vast sea. Not a single robbery had anything to do with them. This made many people think that Han Fei and the others had been secretly punished by someone. Because the Avenger quickly disappeared from everyone's sight, and a new major event was about to happen. But the Grand Purity Palace, on the grounds that they were all humans but didn't work together to resist the sea demons, said that the Sword God Palace and the other 4 palaces had not fulfilled their duties as the 13 heavens of the inner territory. So, they attacked the Sword God Palace. When the Grand Purity Palace attacked the Sword God Palace, the Wuji heaven was patrolling the 13 heavens of the outer territory. The Grand Purity Palace had a heaven-opening state cultivator who was enough to stop the Sword God. And the Wuji ancestor, Bei Lujin, was also a heaven-opening state cultivator. When he patrolled the 13 heavens of the outer territory, people immediately smelled a conspiracy. Grand Purity and Wuji were in charge of internal affairs and external affairs. What was the purpose of such a grand event just before the Arch Palace opened? 13 days later, in the chaotic vast sea, a golden light flashed every few 100,000 miles. The frequency was so high and the speed was so fast that anyone who saw it would be dumbfounded. In the 13 heavens of the outer territory, Han Fei was only familiar with 2. One was the Snow God Palace, and the other was the 10,000 Poison Heaven. In terms of a closer relationship, it was the Snow God Palace. He had already allied with the Snow Girls, and they were very dissatisfied with the Grand Purity and Wuji Heaven. So, Han Fei returned to the Wuji Heaven at full speed. His first destination was naturally the Snow God Palace. Of course, Han Fei could also go to the Martial Emperor City to investigate. However, if he appeared in the Martial Emperor City, it meant that the news of his return had been leaked. So, Han Fei didn't do that. The Snow God Palace. Bingxue Chuling was drawing some arrays in the courtyard. All of a sudden, a golden light flashed before her. Who's there? In the blink of an eye, Snowmorn reached the golden light. However, Snowmorn couldn't go any further. When the golden light dissipated, Han Fei appeared before Bingxue Chuling. Snowmorn was stopped by Han Fei's finger and couldn't go any further. Han Fei wasn't in the mood to chat with Bingxue Chuling at all. He didn't know the real location of the Snow God Palace, and it was inconvenient for him to go in and out even with the nautical globe. That was why he asked for Bingxue Chuling's help. Han Fei said, "Ask your master to come out. Hurry up." As he spoke, hundreds of arrays were stacked under Han Fei's feet to hide him. What if he ran into Yun Tianhe from the Wuji heaven like last time? This time, it was still Yun Tianhe and Bei Luochen who had come. They were both true heaven-opening realm experts. Hearing that, Bingxue Chuling immediately summoned a snowflake. After only 3 seconds, the snow in the courtyard melted into a person. The snow girl said, "You're finally willing to show up?" Han Fei said, "What happened while I was away?" The snow girl said, "The human race is in chaos." Han Fei's eyelids cramped. "What happened?" The snow girl said, "You should know that it's been less than a year and a half since the Imperial Palace was opened." Han Fei said, "Of course I know that, but what does it have to do with the human race being in chaos?" The snow girl said simply, "The Grand Pure Wuji Heaven wants to take this opportunity to strangle you, or rather, strangle you. The Grand Pure Wuji Heaven, the Golden Crow, the Dream Weaving Palace, and the Sword God Palace are restraining the other 4 palaces from moving. The Wuji heaven took the opportunity to patrol the 13 outer heavens to capture the Yin-Yang heaven and the Waterwood heaven. In the end, you've grown too fast and are very extreme. You're not afraid of fighting. Your existence threatens their dominance. And the imperial palace is about to open, but they used some method to shake the barbaric abyss. This means that they have the ability to shake the barbaric abyss for a long time, but they just used it at this moment to lure you out. The more Han Fei listened, the angrier his face became. The Wuji heaven dog is really cunning. I thought he got nothing last time. It turned out that the purpose of the projection was not to cause trouble at all, but to destroy, or to make sacrifices to the outside world in some way to transmit the situation inside to the outside world. In the past, the cages were normal. Even if he could project over, it wouldn't be of much use. Now that the cages of the Yin-Yang heaven and the Waterwood heaven were seriously broken, this guy had bad intentions. Why did he trigger this matter at this time? Han Fei already had an idea. Maybe it was because of his performance in the land of King Graveyard and the martial Emperor City. The Grand Pure Wuji probably wanted to get rid of him, an unstable factor, before the Imperial Palace opened. And he had the Gemini Divine technique and an extremely brilliant disguise technique. Ordinary methods couldn't catch him. That was why they had such a bad idea. The so-called attack on the Sword God's palace was most likely to block the Sword God's 4 palaces and prevent the Sword God from helping again. Bei Luochen patrolling the outer sea was probably to threaten the 13 outer heavens and not to cause trouble. On the other hand, it was to deal with the Yin-Yang heaven and the Waterwood heaven. Han Fei frowned slightly. How many people from the Wuji heaven came? Is it only Bei Luochen, or are Yun Tianhe and the other kings here? The Snow Lady said, "They won't come. The Wuji heaven needs an expert to guard it. After all, they are from the inner domain. If the mermaid royal family takes advantage of this, wouldn't the Wuji heaven be destroyed? Therefore, Yun Tianhe must be guarding the Wuji heaven since Bei Luochen is here. As for the other kings, even if they come, we won't know. But a conservative estimate is that 1 or 2 kings will definitely come. In addition to the Wuji heaven, there will also be Golden Crow heaven and Dream Weaving heaven secretly." Han Fei asked, "Will Bei Luochen ask the kings of the 13 outer heavens to help?" The Snow Lady looked at Han Fei. "What do you think?" Han Fei's heart sank. Even a heaven-opening realm expert had come. To be safe, he had to do this. Han Fei asked, "Bei Luochen also came to the Ice Snow heaven in person?" Seeing the Snow Lady nod slightly, Han Fei smiled coldly. "In that case, don't blame me for being ruthless. Let's go. You won't do anything." Chapter 1935. After learning the basic situation of the chaotic Azure Sea, Han Fei stopped training the soldiers. It was meaningless to train them at this time. Han Fei called Luo Xiaobai and the others out and had a brief discussion. For Han Fei, among the people he brought, Luo Xiaobai was the most intelligent one. Even if other people had high IQs, they might not necessarily listen to what others were saying. At this moment, the 5 of them gathered around the pot and listened to Han Fei's brief explanation. Zhang Xuanyu cursed, "Bastard, you're a heaven-opening expert, yet you're so shameless. Of the top 3 immortal palaces, 1 is blocking our reinforcements, and the other is waiting for us. It's obvious that they want to get rid of us." Luren Kuang gnawed on the garlic sea cucumber and scolded angrily, "These people are so evil. They're all humans, but they're willing to attack the billions of humans from the Yin-Yang heaven and the Waterwood heaven?" Xia Shaochan said, "There are countless creatures in this world. It's said that human beings are just one of the thousands of races in the vast ocean. The rise and fall of a race may be nothing in the eyes of the real experts. It was said that during the chaos of the Azure Sea, although many experts died, there were even more ordinary living beings that died. So, there's no guarantee that they'll really make a move. Feifei, you have to listen to me. We can't walk right into the trap. You're not the savior of the world. If Bei Luochen really dares to attack the Yin-Yang sky and the Shuemu sky, we'll destroy him after we rise." Lu Renkuang nodded quickly. "Their goal is only to kill you. In reality, they won't necessarily slaughter all living beings." Xia Shaochan nodded. It's possible. They might divide the forces of the Yin-Yang heaven and the Shuemu heaven, but they might not be so ruthless towards the entire human race. Han Fei took a bite of the lobster and looked at Luo Xiaobai. What do you think? Luo Xiaobai came back to herself and said, "Oh, I'm thinking about something." What? Everyone fixed their eyes on Luo Xiaobai. Luo Xiaobai asked, "Is Bei Luchen going back to the palace?" Zhang Xuanyu immediately slapped his thigh and said, "There's a 99% chance that it won't happen. How many heaven-opening realm cultivators were there in the chaotic vast ocean? Wasn't the reason why the limitless heaven was able to maintain its position in the top 3 because they had heaven-opening stage powerhouses overseeing it? If he went to the Arch Palace, who would take care of the limitless heavens? Aren't you afraid of being destroyed?" Luo Xiaobai said, "That's right. Bei Luochen didn't go to the Arch Palace, so he came to the outer domain to patrol and try to break into the barbaric abyss. That heaven-opening realm expert from the Supreme Purity Palace did not go to the Imperial Palace, so he brought a few great immortal palaces to attack the Sword God's 4 palaces." Han Fei seemed to understand something. "What do you mean?" Luo Xiaobai said, "You said that the 4 palaces of the Sword God and the immortal palaces led by the Grand Pure Wuji seem to be united, but they are actually against each other. In that case, even without you, they might not allow anyone from the Sword God's 4 palaces to go to the Imperial Palace. Is that possible?" Han Fei quickly nodded. The Sword God alone suppressed a sea region and protected the peace of the 4 palaces. The Grand Pure One and the Limitless Sword God were also rather fearful. There was another. Wang Yijian, would they change their minds? Yes, Han Fei's heart trembled. He had pretended to be Wang Yijian, which was too eye-catching after he appeared. He killed a king with 1 strike and used a more advanced power. This inevitably made Bei Luochen and the Grand Pure One feel threatened. If Wang Yijian established a sword palace, wouldn't there be 2 heaven-opening realm cultivators in the Sword God's palace? Therefore, now they blocked the Sword God's 4 palaces. Maybe they wanted to capture Wang Yijian. Or they could force the Sword God's 4 palaces to stop anyone from entering the Arch Palace this time. This would directly cut off the possibility of the next generation of the Sword God's 4 palaces becoming kings. However, Han Fei wondered, are they going to regain the absolute dominance of the Grand Pure Wuji Palace? Luo Xiaobai said, "Let's not think about the Grand Pure Palace's intentions for the Sword God's 4 palaces. Let's talk about the timing of their attack. In the past, they didn't do anything for decades, but they chose to do it now." Before anyone could give an answer, Luo Xiaobai said, "In fact, they aren't sure if you will go to the Savage Abyss to fight them because of the Yin-Yang heaven and the Waterwood heaven. So, in the first few decades, they didn't do anything because you had too much time to choose. If they can't find you, they may slaughter some people, but if they kill all of them, won't the heaven-opening realm cultivator's Taoist heart be clouded?" Xia Xiaochan said, "Speaking of clouded Taoist heart, if Han Fei doesn't go, will he?" Xia Xiaochan looked at Han Fei. She wasn't sure, because after getting used to Han Fei's Taoist heart, everyone could realize the importance of the Taoist heart. Han Fei was silent for a while. Maybe not. Han Fei guessed that he would have to think about it if he needed to. The reason why he wasn't sure was that his feelings for the Yin-Yang heaven and the Waterwood heaven weren't that deep. Of course, it wasn't that he didn't have any feelings for them. He had contributed the most to the development of the Yin-Yang heaven and the Waterwood heaven. Besides, he came out with the hopes of the hundreds of millions of creatures of the Yin-Yang heaven and the Waterwood heaven. If they didn't see him at the last moment, how disappointed would they be? Luo Xiaobai was silent for a while and didn't dwell on this question. Instead, she continued, "They paid such a big price not just to let Han Fei's Taoist heart be clouded. They chose to take action at this time probably because they also need time to break the cage of the Savage Abyss. And this time, I'm afraid, will take more than a year. If the Savage Abyss opens at the last moment when the Imperial Palace opens." Luo Xiaobai looked at Han Fei. "If that's the case, will you go or not?" Han Fei, everyone, wow. Zhang Xuanyu couldn't help but gasp. So that's how it is. This old thing is very evil. So this is his purpose? He's planning to wait for the yin-yang heaven to come out just to prevent Han Fei from going to the imperial palace with us. Xia Xiaochan was speechless. You're too shameless. They don't care whether you go to the imperial palace or not. Zhang Xuanyu. Lu Renquang patted Zhang Xuanyu on the shoulder and said, Brother, accept the reality. Zhang Xuanyu. Han Fei, on the other hand, pondered for a long time, and then the corners of his mouth twitched a few times. He cursed, Son of a bitch, why didn't I think of this? There must be a time limit for the opening of the imperial palace. If I go there late, I probably won't be able to enter. Anyway, Bei Luochen won't go, so it doesn't matter to him. If I don't go to the savage abyss, he will divide the yin-yang heaven and the waterwood heaven. Anyway, he won't lose anything, and he can occupy the 2 immortal palaces for free. Damn it. Luo Xiaobai shook her head. No, if you don't go to the savage abyss, he will definitely slaughter all the experts of the yin-yang heaven and the waterwood heaven to force you out. At that time, you will be in a dilemma, and it will be difficult for you to rationally control the overall situation. Everyone couldn't help but look at Han Fei. The pressure was too great, and they couldn't help but sympathize with Han Fei. Although Han Fei was really strong, he hadn't reached the heaven-opening realm. Faced with such a choice, except for Luo Xiaobai, no one else could make a choice. After a long time, Han Fei took a breath and said, Forget it, after all, there is still a year and a half. There is still more than a year before the opening of the Imperial Palace, and naturally more than a year before the opening of the Savage Abyss. They were all outstanding, and their calculations were very precise. Whether I go or not, how can I let them take it calmly? Do they want to force me? I'll give them face. Luo Xiaobai asked, What are you going to do? Han Fei grinned. Just wait and see. After eating and drinking, Han Fei turned back into Wang Yijian, his white hair fluttering in the wind, his body broken by the sword, and his temperament was feminine. He chose to go to the Savage Abyss first. Since Bei Luochen came here to destroy the Savage Abyss, he would most likely wait for him. So Han Fei was not afraid of him. And he had the golden light body technique, so he didn't have to be afraid of Bei Luochen. One day later, Han Fei made sure that he was in his peak state before he used the golden light body technique and rushed to the center of the Savage Abyss. Han Fei's behavior would inevitably expose the golden light body technique, or in other words, the golden light body technique would be used by Wang Yijian. After a few hours, Han Fei subconsciously pinched his fingers, stopped moving forward, and stood still in the vortex storm. Han Fei took back the 9-palace ruler of destiny, and the ruler moved and soon fell on the ominous hexagram. Although he tried to go to the ominous hexagram several times, he still failed. No way. The corners of Han Fei's mouth curled up slightly, and he flashed 100,000 kilometers away. All of a sudden, Han Fei saw a pair of eyes meeting his in midair. Han Fei had seen this gaze more than once. Last time in the Savage Abyss, he and Bei Luochen looked at each other once, but at that time, he was Han Fei. But now, he was Wang Yijian. Similarly, with a quick glance, Bei Luochen's figure disappeared. As the saying goes, when enemies meet, they are especially fierce. Han Fei used the identity of Wang Yijian to kill Bei Xianbing in the Medicine King Heaven, which made Bei Luochen furious. Now that he saw Wang Yijian walking into the trap, he had no reason not to come. In just 1 second, Bei Luochen appeared 200,000 kilometers away from Han Fei. At the speed. In fact, Bei Luochen and Han Fei's speed was not much different. However, Han Fei's golden light body technique was not the limit. When Bei Luochen was 100,000 kilometers away, Han Fei immediately said, Okay, let's stop there. Otherwise, there's nothing to talk about. However, how could Bei Luochen listen to Han Fei? He came with all his strength, and Han Fei disdainfully flashed with a golden light and retreated 200,000 kilometers away. Bei Luochen was stunned and searched for a while, only to find that Wang Yijian had appeared more than 200,000 kilometers away. This speed was probably not inferior to his. Han Fei said, Wu Ji, you're not qualified to catch up with me. Bei Luochen naturally didn't believe it. His speed burst out, but after 3 seconds, Han Fei didn't move at all. With a flash of golden light, he disappeared hundreds of thousands of kilometers away. Bei Luochen thought, what kind of combat skill is this? Chapter 1936. Bei Luochen wasn't stupid. After chasing for a few seconds, he stopped. His purpose here was to deal with Han Fei. He didn't know what Wang Yijian's purpose was. Moreover, wasn't Wang Yijian at the Sword God Palace? Bei Luochen stood in the air. His voice fell into Han Fei's ears from over 200,000 miles away. Wang Yijian, how dare you appear in front of me? Even if you have a miraculous movement technique, do you think I can't catch up to you if I don't hesitate to sacrifice my capital? Han Fei said indifferently, you can try. Han Fei's voice was indifferent and straightforward. He looked as if he was going to beat him up. Bei Luochen's eyelids twitched. Why are you here? Since you're not here to challenge me or stop me from attacking the barbaric abyss, then are you here for Han Fei? Han Fei crossed his arms and raised his head high as he looked at Bei Luochen with a disdainful expression. You've besieged my sword god's palace and attacked the yin-yang sky from the outside. Do you really think you're invincible because you've conquered the human race? Bei Luochen sneered. It's the Grand Purity Palace that blocked your sword god palace, right? What does that have to do with the Wuji heaven? Han Fei said, you and I both know. Why are you putting on an act? Bei Luochen snorted. Then when you killed Black Ice that day, were you also protecting Han Fei? Han Fei's expression was cold. Yes, so what? Bei Luochen's aura shook. Although he was furious, there was nothing he could do. As he said, even if Wang Yijian's movement technique was amazing, if he really used his full speed, he might be able to take him down. But the price would be, Bei Luochen said with a straight face, speak. Don't tell me you're here to chat with me. Why are you here? Han Fei's gaze was cold. I'm here to tell you something. Listen carefully. Wuji heaven, if you want to touch the yin-yang heaven, don't blame me for being ruthless. From today onwards, the human world will be in chaos. The 36 profound heavens will be in chaos. I hope the Wuji heaven can handle it. When Bei Luochen heard this, he couldn't help but laugh. Han Fei, you brat, you didn't even dare to say anything. I came with you instead. This is the first time this old man has heard such ruthless words. This old man wants to see how a newly promoted little king like him can stir up trouble in the world. Han Fei remained unmoved. He maintained his cold expression and said, Oh, by the way, I, Wang Yijian, am also one of the people who have thrown the world into chaos. All of a sudden, Han Fei felt that a creepy black moon rose from the sea. Swish, Han Fei's face slightly changed. He felt that the air within 100,000 kilometers became sticky. Bei Luochen could launch an attack from such a distance? Are Emperor Realm cultivators so powerful? In the blink of an eye, Han Fei activated the golden light movement technique and began to escape. While he was escaping, he found that the black moon was glowing with a hazy yellow light. Wherever the yellow light shone, a barrier seemed to be born. However, Han Fei didn't expect such an unexpected change either, so he jumped 300,000 kilometers with the golden leap. However, the distance he actually traveled was only 60,000 miles. Hiss, hiss, Han Fei gasped. The heaven-opening realm was indeed extraordinary. He thought that he could ignore the heaven-opening realm cultivators with the golden light movement technique. But now it seemed that he had underestimated his opponent. Bei Luochen came extremely fast. After all, for a strong master like Bei Luochen, his speed had already reached the upper limit. However, just as the old tortoise had said, they would not do so. Han Fei only ran 60,000 kilometers with the golden light leap, which gave Bei Luochen an opportunity. At the moment when Han Fei's golden light flashed, Bei Luochen arrived. He didn't know where Han Fei was going, so Bei Luochen only chased Han Fei to the place where he had just fled. At this point, the two were 60,000 kilometers apart. Bei Luochen laughed loudly. Wang Yijian, do you really think I want to listen to your nonsense? Black moon void sky, leeches out of the four seas. Within 100,000 kilometers, a layer of strange black fog descended, and a pair of scarlet eyes aimed at Han Fei. In the blink of an eye, the pair of scarlet eyes had locked onto Han Fei for a brief moment. Han Fei felt his body stiffen. Immediately, Han Fei thought, this space can't be blocked. Swish! Another golden light flashed, and Han Fei broke through the black curtain in an instant. However, because of the black moon, Han Fei's speed was still not fast enough, and he only appeared 30,000 kilometers away from the black curtain. This distance was not a distance for Bei Luochen at all. However, Han Fei did not panic. Behind him, the shattered sword appeared in his hand. Celestial qi and ferocious qi surged, and the sword fell like the great Tao. Like a flash in the sky, the void shattered layer by layer as it headed straight for Bei Luochen. Bei Luochen had long known that Wang Yijin had immortal spiritual qi and fierce qi, but he hadn't seen how he used them. At this moment, he was shocked. This sword contained both the great Tao and boundless killing intent, as if an immortal and a demon were in the same body. Bei Luochen could almost imagine this kind of power. Among the Pioneer Sea Realm cultivators, there were only a handful who could take it and survive. But Bei Luochen was a Pioneer Sea Realm cultivator after all. He waved his hand, and a black moon instantly disappeared into the void. Facing this sword, Bei Luochen shouted, "You're a Pioneer Sea Realm cultivator. You've mastered the power of the Pioneer Sea Realm in advance. You're still a Pioneer Sea Realm cultivator after all." The immortal spiritual qi burst out, and the boundless void shattered. However, when it collided with the black moon, it couldn't move an inch forward, and the sword aura shattered as if it would disintegrate at any time. Seeing the pair of scarlet eyes continue to look at him, Han Fei used his full strength while he could still move and directly increased the speed of the golden light movement technique to the fastest, that is, the speed of light. At that moment, Han Fei saw his spiritual sea, and everything in his previous life flashed before his eyes. But Han Fei clearly knew that these were his memories, his spiritual world. But in addition to these, Han Fei saw a faint blue color. Han Fei's heart skipped a beat. It was the river of time. Having experienced the river of time, he naturally recognized it immediately. In addition to the flowing river of time, Han Fei also saw a void, which was dotted with starlight, like a sea of stars. In addition to the sea of stars, there was also a white hole, which led to an unknown place. In addition to the white hole, there was also a staircase, which led to an unknown place. Han Fei couldn't help but be stunned. In the extreme speed, he seemed to be able to choose where he wanted to go. However, Han Fei had no idea what this choice meant. Han Fei had no idea what the meaning of the white hole, the sea of stars, and the staircase was. The only thing that Han Fei was familiar with was the river of time. At this moment, although Han Fei's thoughts seemed to have stopped for a moment, he could feel that he was rushing toward the sea of stars and the void. Han Fei gritted his teeth. He was not strong enough now. These places might have big secrets. If he wanted to come, he would have plenty of opportunities in the future. There was no need to rush at this critical moment. So Han Fei rushed into the river of time without hesitation. Although Han Fei was not very proficient in the great Tao of time, great path of time, Nian had grown up. Every once in a while, he would discuss the secret uses of various time techniques with Nian, but it was also the first time that Han Fei entered the river of time. Nian also mentioned the river of time. She said that it was like entering the river of time. He couldn't be attracted by things outside of time, nor could he swim a long time. The former was easy to go to unknown times and places, which would attract the attention of the heavenly Tao. But a long time, it was easy to get lost. Therefore, Han Fei would only come in for a moment. Pop! The moment Han Fei rushed into the river of time, his body suddenly showed signs of exhaustion. He felt that his vitality was being pulled by time. Immediately, Han Fei activated the great path of time to resist the power of the river of time to erase vitality. At the same time, he reversed the flow of the great path of time around him, resisting the power of time so that he would not deviate from the current world. After entering for at most 1 second, Han Fei rushed out of the river of time. Seeing that his body was mixed with some great path of time, which was a sign that he had not returned to normal time, Han Fei disappeared on the spot with a thought. When Han Fei came out again, he glanced around and saw the scene of the divine aura collapsing and the void collapsing 600,000 kilometers away. Bei Luochen, on the other hand, looked at where Han Fei was indifferently and a little surprised. How did this guy do it? He was stuck at the limit of speed and came out? Of course, Han Fei didn't stop. Golden light appeared on his body, and he continued to escape. Even if Bei Luochen chased after him, he couldn't catch up with him. Unless he could keep running at the limit of speed. Above the sea, the black moon dissipated, and the scarlet eyes disappeared. Bei Luochen took a deep look in the direction where Han Fei left. He murmured, "This guy's strength is only half a step into the sky-opening realm. He's a disaster after all." Sword God Palace. Millions of kilometers away, Han Fei appeared. As soon as he appeared, the heavenly awakening divine technique fell on him, and his stiff body recovered. What a terrifying spiritual beast. Black Moon Void Sky Leech, Wujiwil. They're really terrifying. Han Fei twisted his body, and the nautical panorama appeared in his hand. As the panorama rotated, a golden light flashed, and Han Fei disappeared without a trace. God of Fishing /book /57885/ Chapter 1937. Bei Luochen didn't dare to leave the desolate abyss after Han Fei and Bei Luochen fought. He was afraid that this was Wang Yijian's ploy to lure him away. Thus, Bei Luochen summoned the nearest peerless heavenly king and asked him to relay the news. About 4 hours later, less than half a day later, Avalon of 5 elements. Above the immortal palace, Gongzhan was drinking with a middle-aged man. Gongzhan said, "Brother Chao Feng, if the peerless heavenly king can quell the chaos in the desolate abyss, force Han Fei to show himself and kill him, peace will return to the 36 immortal palaces. We can even take down the 4 sword god palaces." The middle-aged man's lips curled up slightly. With the patriarch personally taking action, Han Fei won't be able to escape if he shows himself. What I'm afraid of is that he'll give up on the yin-yang heaven and waterwood heaven. Gongzhan's face darkened. We can't rule out that possibility. He's ferocious and powerful, but he doesn't do things according to plan. It's hard to figure out what he's thinking. The yin-yang heaven returned for revenge. Wasn't it Han Fei who caused trouble for the past few decades? Gongzhan cupped his hands at the middle-aged man. "Brother Chao Feng, I've had to trouble you during this period. But with you around, the Avalon of 5 elements will be safe. I don't have to worry about you anymore." The middle-aged man laughed. "Brother Gong, don't be frightened by that kid. Let him jump around. Let's see how long he can jump around after the yin-yang heaven returns. As for the safety of the Avalon of 5 elements, if that kid Han Fei really dares to come, I Li Chao Feng am very lucky. I'll kill him, take his resources, and search his spirit. Isn't that perfect?" The two of them looked at each other and laughed. They raised their cups and drank together. As a matter of fact, as soon as the wine entered their mouths, before they could even swallow it, the void suddenly shattered, and a ray of golden light rushed in. "Who's there? How dare you barge into the Avalon of 5 elements?" When the golden light appeared, Han Fei's figure appeared in the 5 elements immortal palace. Gongzhan's expression changed drastically when he saw that it was Han Fei. The scene of Han Fei killing Yu Meng was still vivid in his mind. Although he had bragged to Li Chao Feng that he was no match for Li Chao Feng at that time, but he was able to escape calmly, in reality, who would know that he was also like a stray dog at that time? Gongzhan shouted, "Not good. Brother Chao Feng, this is Han Fei." Li Chao Feng was taken aback as well. Damn it. He was just talking about this kid, and this kid came. Li Chao Feng grinned hideously. "Han Fei, there's a way out for you, but you barge into hell instead. Come and accept your death." After a moment of shock, Li Chao Feng became excited. He was actually not weak in the Wuji sky. He was even stronger than Bei Xianbing, but he did not have a heaven creation realm patriarch like Bei Xianbing. Otherwise, how could he let Bei Xianbing stand up for him all the time? As a matter of fact, Li Chao Feng stretched out his hand, and a 3-meter-long fish-slaying knife appeared in his hand. With a roar, a purple scorpion that was over 1,000 feet long entered his body. Above Li Chaofeng's head, a purple cone shadow was ready to attack. On both sides of his body, there were two purple lights, which were the special effects of fusing with spiritual beasts. Li Chaofeng was not stupid. If Han Fei dared to barge into the Avalon of 5 elements, how could he be weak? Han Fei must have felt that even if Gong Zhan used all the power of the Avalon of 5 elements, he would not be a match for him. Li Chaofeng knew very well how powerful Gong Zhan was. With the help of the Immortal Palace, Han Fei's power would not be weaker than his. Therefore, Li Chaofeng knew that he was the variable. Because he had come to the Avalon of 5 elements with Bei Luochen, Han Fei could not have known in advance. His purpose here was to prepare for emergencies when the barbaric abyss broke. Li Chaofeng shouted, "Brother Gong, seal this place. Don't leave the 5 elements formation. Let's take down this kid together." Before Li Chaofeng said anything, Gong Zhan had already done so. Gong Zhan raised 2 fingers, and 5 pillars of fire, red, yellow, green, blue, and white, appeared in the 5 directions of the Immortal Palace. The moment the pillars of fire were ignited, Han Fei took a long breath and said to himself, "If I hadn't searched for a long time, I would have arrived a long time ago." Wuji, the game starts now. Han Fei, who was already crazy, had reached his strongest state at this moment. In addition, Han Fei's glabella split open, and the invincible eye appeared. All of a sudden, Han Fei's strength was so strong that his battle suit began to vibrate. Roar! As Han Fei roared, a giant celestial body that was more than 200 meters tall appeared behind him. As soon as the avatar appeared, it was ferocious and murderous. Han Fei chuckled. "I didn't expect that there would be 2 kings guarding this place. It seems that I'm indeed very lucky. Gong Zhan, I let you escape 21 years ago. Let's see if you can escape this time." Avatar? Li Chaofeng gasped. Maybe others didn't know about avatars, but he certainly didn't. However, it was impossible for him not to know. Anyone who knew of his king would know of the existence of the Dharmakaya. This was an elusive superpower. The power of the avatar might be even stronger than that of the original body. And this avatar came from the martial emperor city. It was ferocious and might not be easy to deal with. Li Chaofeng shouted, "Brother Gong, leave Han Fei to me. You lock the avatar with the 5 elements formation." Gong Zhan's face turned green. "Fuck, leave this thing to me? This is the first time I've seen this thing. Look at its ferocious face. I know it's not easy to fight." Besides, Li Chaofeng chose so quickly. Obviously, he didn't want to face the avatar. However, Li Chaofeng had never fought with Han Fei, so he didn't know how terrifying Han Fei was. If he had known that Han Fei was Wang Yijian, and that Han Fei's combat power could enter the top 10 of the Sea Expansion realm, he would have begged to fight with the avatar. However, in this hurry, neither of them had time to react. They fought with all their strength. Gong Zhan ordered, 5 elements and phenomena, life and death strange gate, 5 ultimate divine fire formation. Li Chaofeng's attack was not as complicated as Gong Zhan's, because he didn't have time to prepare for Han Fei. Therefore, the purple light behind Li Chaofeng flashed, and the poisonous stinger flashed like a star, trying to penetrate Han Fei directly. But Han Fei grabbed this poisonous stinger with one hand, just like catching Xieyu's arrow. However, when fighting with Xieyou, Han Fei didn't open the invincible eye. In this battle, he wanted to win quickly and kill all of them, so Han Fei used the invincible eye. Han Fei, who had unleashed his full power, naturally wouldn't be repelled by a poisonous stinger. Li Chaofeng was shocked. How could Han Fei catch his poisonous stinger barehanded? But then he laughed. "Han Fei, you dare to take the poisonous stinger of my purple dragon demonic scorpion? God wants to kill you." Han Fei's right hand was quickly dyed purple, and in the purple poison, black silk threads were trying to rush to Han Fei's body. However, the corners of Han Fei's mouth curled slightly, and he smiled faintly. "Poison? Who do you think you are?" Crack! As Han Fei clenched his fist, the whole shadow of the scorpion tail was full of cracks, and the purple poison on Han Fei's hand was rapidly fading. Li Chaofeng was horrified. How is this possible? At the moment when the whole scorpion tail collapsed, The two purple lights on Li Chaofeng's body attacked Han Fei's dantian respectively. The sharp metal chi had the power to penetrate Han Fei's body. At this time, a blue light appeared in front of Han Fei, and he grabbed with his left hand, and a blade of time was pulled out from it. He slashed out and directly cut off these two stingers. Oh! 6-pole thunder knife, cut. Li Chaofeng was horrified. He thought that Han Fei was resisting the poison with a strong will, so he needed help. Li Chaofeng jumped up and slashed with the fish-slaying knife. The blade fell, and wherever the blade passed, the void was torn like paper. With the giant space blade and the rich lightning, he dashed at Han Fei. Before the knife arrived, the 6 layers of lightning had fallen, and even Han Fei felt a little numb. But Han Fei didn't care at all. He stretched out 2 fingers. The great path returns to 1. Swished, Han Fei turned into a golden light and suddenly appeared in front of Li Chaofeng in the next second. This time, Han Fei's attack was like Xia Shaochan stabbing a knife. The great path returns to 1 directly stabbed into Li Chaofeng's dantian. Li Chaofeng had never thought that in his life, the outcome of a battle between Pioneer Sea Realm cultivators would be decided by the first move. The battle between the two was as fast as a flash of lightning. However, he had already been defeated. Gong Zhan's formation had just been activated, and before he had time to fight with the celestial body, he was shocked to find that Li Chaofeng had exploded. However, Li Chaofeng, whose combat power was superior to his, didn't even manage to block his attack and was beaten to death. How strong was this Han Fei? At the moment Li Chaofeng exploded, he turned into thousands of blood shadows and tried to break the void. But Han Fei was already prepared. For formations appeared and locked the void. What followed was the void lines. When the void lines constantly pierced the blood shadows and soul bodies in the void, Li Chaofeng's death was already a foregone conclusion. At this moment, Han Fei looked up at Gong Zhan and smiled slightly. The moment you failed to ambush me, you shouldn't have stayed in the Avalon of 5 elements. Unfortunately, you don't understand me. Third update. Please vote for me. I'm not in a good state recently. Everyone, please bear with me. End of this chapter. Chapter 1938. Gong Zhan had a mental breakdown. He had never thought that Han Fei would come to him at this moment. This was a slap to Bei Luochen's face. But that was exactly what had happened. Li Chaofeng had never thought that he would die here. Seeing that Li Chaofeng's soul was collapsing and being destroyed at a terrifying speed, Gong Zhan knew that Li Chaofeng was doomed. Roar! At this moment, the 5 elements divine fire transformed into a 5-colored knife and was attacking Han Fei's firmament body. However, the firmament body had a body too. It followed its master. With a thought, the firmament body condensed a pair of axes and chopped down furiously. The axes were enhanced by the great Tao of gravity. As the saying went, 1 powerful man could defeat 10 skilled men. Although the giant axes were blocked by an invisible barrier, the 100 battles divine hammer technique turned into axe strikes and continued to strike. Dong, dong, dong. In the sky above the main city of the Avalon of 5 elements, power vibrated. Everyone raised their heads and looked up. They thought to themselves, what exactly is happening in the sky? Ordinary people couldn't understand, but many venerable experts in the Avalon of 5 elements were shocked. What was happening in the Immortal Palace? In the 5 Elements sect, the highest school in the Avalon of 5 elements, several young men looked surprised. Someone exclaimed, Ziliu, is something happening in the Immortal Palace? The guy called Ziliu was one of the 5 elements disciples. His face was grave, thinking that this was a sign of a battle. The power of the tremors had spread from the Immortal Palace to the outside world. How powerful must the person be to do that? At a time like this, even getting close to the Immortal Palace would be crushed to death by the terrifying power, let alone taking a look. Ziliu had an idea. I'll go and take a look. You guys stay here. After saying that, this guy disappeared. A moment later, he emerged from a place far away and murmured, how can an expert who can break into the Immortal Palace be an ordinary person? He has to leave since he's a 5 elements disciple. In the Immortal Palace, Gong Zhan knew that Han Fei was here to kill, so he didn't expect Han Fei to let him go. At this moment he couldn't care less. A five-colored ring of fire suddenly emerged from the immortal palace, surrounded Gong Zhan, and sank into his body. Han Fei felt that the power of the entire Avalon of 5 elements was pressing down on the firmament body. No matter how strong the firmament celestial body was, it would not be able to forcefully break through this restrictive force. With a thought, a drop of infinity water in front of him was nailed to Gong Zhan, who was in the outbreak period, like a nail. Roar! At that moment, a 5 elements dragonfish burst out. The dragonfish spewed strange flames from its mouth, but it couldn't stop the piercing of the infinity water. In the end, it swatted its tail forcefully. Explode! Rumble! The strength of the infinity water depended on Han Fei's strength. Therefore, when the infinity water exploded, a destructive power broke out in the fairy palace. Bang bang bang, ka ka ka. 2 of the 5 fire pillars of the 5 elements immortal palace had been destroyed. Hundreds of cracks appeared in the small world. Han Fei couldn't help but be surprised. He didn't expect the small world to be so sturdy that it could withstand such a violent explosion. However, the explosion of the infinity water had destroyed all of Gong Zhan's means of controlling the firmament doppelganger. Li Chaofeng, who was on the verge of death, ultimately failed to survive the terrifying explosion. Rumble! In the sky above the Avalon of 5 elements, a blood-colored crack appeared in the sky and blood rain poured down. It was a typical sign that a king had died. Hiss! Someone was dumbfounded. Who died? Someone was shocked. Our king has died? Many venerables finally realized that something was wrong and were ready to leave the Avalon of 5 elements. A king had suddenly died in the 5 elements immortal palace. Any normal person would think that Gong Zhan had died. Zilu, who had just run out, was sweating profusely. A look of fear appeared on his face. Teacher has fallen? At this moment, many kings in the immortal palaces in the entire outer sea sensed it. The status of the Pioneer Sea realm in the chaotic ocean was like that of the Venerable realm in the Yin-Yang heaven. Many people could sense the death of a Pioneer Sea realm expert. The kings of the immortal palaces were all stunned. What had happened in recent years? The Pioneer Sea realm experts had died one after another. Why did another person die all of a sudden today? The demons in the outer sea and the humans at the bottom of the sea were all surprised. A sea demon looked at the sky. Humans, the internal strife has begun? An elderly human sneered. The 36 mysterious skies exist only in name. Let's see what happens this time. Bei Luochen held a broken jade slip in his hand and looked at the trace of blood in the sky. His face was ashen. Li Chaofeng was dead. Another Pioneer Sea realm expert had died. How long had it been? Who could accept the death of 2 Pioneer Sea realm experts in just a few decades? The Avalon of 5 elements? Buzz! Bei Luochen's body moved, leaving a projection behind while his real body headed straight for the Avalon of 5 elements. He knew that Wang Yijian would retaliate, but he didn't expect that Wang Yijian's retaliation would be so precise and come so fast. What would happen if he allowed a powerful expert like Wang Yijian to go on a killing spree outside? Who would be able to stop him? However, Bei Luochen did not have much hope. Even if he rushed to the Avalon of 5 elements at full speed, the battle would be over by the time he arrived. Nevertheless, he still had to go. At this moment, Gong Zhan's 5-element dragonfish was blown to pieces. Gong Zhan was dripping with blood. With a golden flash, Han Fei appeared in front of him. But as soon as Han Fei appeared, 5-colored mystic light burst out of Gong Zhan's body and rushed at Han Fei. However, Han Fei didn't look at the 5-colored mystic light but pierced Gong Zhan with his sword. They were both pierced by the Dao Convergent sword, but Gong Zhan didn't die so easily, although he couldn't defeat Han Fei. Although he was no match for Han Fei, this was his immortal palace after all. An invisible array in the immortal palace lit up and Gong Zhan's body recovered. Han Fei sneered. I'll smash you. The firmament body was like a violent Hercules, and the giant axe in its hand never stopped. Clang, 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 the 100-array divine hammer smashed thousands of times, and Han Fei controlled the infinity water to drill into the array. As for Han Fei, although he wanted to kill Gong Zhan with the divine demon-killing intent, that was his trump card and also a cover for Wang Yijian's identity. Therefore, Han Fei also joined the battle. He grabbed the embroidery needle and attacked with the Monkey King 3,000 strikes. At this moment, the embroidery needle was like a divine giant stick. Every time it struck, there would be overlapping shadows. The full power of the sea-quelling bizarre treasure was fully unleashed. Puff! Gong Zhan, facing the strong attack of Han Fei, the firmament body, and the infinity water, couldn't defeat them even though he could use most of the power of the 5 elements immortal palace. He vomited blood. Crack, 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 the small world was about to collapse. As a last resort, Gong Zhan decisively gave up this void. He intended to directly descend to the immortal palace. At the moment of life and death, Gong Zhan shouted, Han Fei, if you're not afraid of the hellfire, destroy the entire Avalon of 5 elements. Crack! At this moment, the void shattered. In the sky above the Avalon of 5 elements, the 5 elements immortal palace appeared in everyone's sight. Gong Zhan tried to descend the immortal palace. However, the firmament body blocked the immortal palace and madly rose to the sky, not letting the immortal palace descend. Under the shocked gazes of countless people, Han Fei said coldly, in the battle of the 5 elements immortal palace, the dogs of Tai Chi Wuji should be killed. I, Han Fei, am the king of the world. How can I allow you to harm me? Supreme Yin-Yang Wheel. In the distant sky, a huge yin-yang diagram came crashing down, and the sound of something being torn apart could be heard. This time, it was a real battle between the yin-yang Great Path and the 5 elements Great Path. In fact, the strength of the Great Path in the Pioneer Sea realm couldn't be seen because of the different mastery of the Great Path. But the power that Han Fei burst out at this moment was too strong, and it completely crushed Gong Zhan. Therefore, the 5 elements barrier couldn't resist the impact of the supreme yin-yang wheel and shattered. However, at the last moment, Gong Zhan roared, Han Fei, even if I die, I'll destroy your Taoist heart. I'll explode. Han Fei secretly cursed that this guy was crazy. Gong Zhan was going to bury the billions of people in the entire Avalon of 5 elements with him in order to create a hellfire not in his heart. But how could Han Fei let him do that? Blue lights intertwined in front of him, and with a flash of golden light, Han Fei and Gong Zhan disappeared from the immortal palace at the same time. The next moment, 600,000 miles away from the Avalon of 5 elements, Han Fei's golden blood was dripping. Boom, in the sky above, another bright red crack that pierced through the heavens appeared. Hiss! This time, countless people were shocked. Another king has fallen? On the snowy day, the Snow Lady's hands trembled. Han Fei's appearance caused such a big commotion? Which family did he kill? In the 10,000 poison sky, Huang Jie looked up at the sky and murmured, Chaos, chaos, the human race is going to be in chaos. I wonder if Han Fei is a lucky star or a jinx. Bei Luochen was still on his way. Seeing another king fall, he knew that something had happened to Gong Zhan. It seemed that even with the help of the immortal palace, Gong Zhan couldn't stop Wang Yijian for long. An hour later, Han Fei reappeared in the sky above the Avalon of 5 elements. At that moment, hundreds of Han Fei's projections descended on all the important places in the Avalon of 5 elements. Then, Han Fei's voice shook the heavens and earth. He said, My name is Han Fei, the current king of the human race. I want to destroy the Tai Ching sect, punish the Wuji sect, and unify the 36 immortal palaces. In the Avalon of 5 elements, Gong Zhan is unjust and takes the side of the evildoer. I will clean him up. Chapter 1939. After entering Gong Zhan's and Li Chaofeng's origin seas, Han Fei had obtained countless resources. Basically, he had taken everything he could. If he had to calculate the amount of resources, Han Fei roughly estimated that according to his own standards, it should be enough to fill the source world with a radius of 30,000 kilometers. Therefore, Han Fei still felt that it was not enough and continued to plunder the Avalon of 5 elements. Anyway, the Avalon of 5 elements would most likely be divided up later, so it was not too much to scrape a layer of oil from it first. In addition to resources, what made Han Fei even happier was that the demon purification pot had absorbed more than 7,000 strands of chaotic energy from the two's origin seas. This number really made Han Fei overjoyed. When he killed Yu Meng and the Crazy Four Kings, he didn't get so much chaotic energy. Among them, more than 4,000 strands were from Gong Zhan. Is it because of the Immortal Palace? In addition, Han Fei unexpectedly obtained a new sea-quelling painting. This painting was about the same size as the one he had. However, the density of the spiritual qi inside was higher than his own. After all, this was the chaotic ocean, not the yin-yang heaven. Having no time to study the sea-quelling painting, Han Fei turned around and went to the 5 Elements Immortal Palace. Like the yin-yang palace, the belly of the palace was a place where many forces gathered. Here, Han Fei felt that the spiritual energy here was filled with a large amount of chaotic energy. If he were given 3 to 5 years to absorb here, he would probably be able to absorb thousands of strands of chaotic energy. Unfortunately, he didn't have that time. Han Fei could only sigh. These people didn't even know they were sitting on a mountain of treasures. If the yin-yang palace had these forces, his strength would definitely have increased. After doing all this, Han Fei's projection returned one after another. Han Fei roughly glanced at the resources he brought back. They were worth about 500 million ultra-quality spiritual stones. After all, they were plundered from the entire Avalon of 5 elements. If it weren't for the lack of time, he could have plundered more than 1 billion. But now, if Bei Luochen hadn't gotten lost, he should be almost there. Then, with a flash of golden light, Han Fei flew away. Han Fei left, but the people of the Avalon of 5 elements were dumbfounded. Who knew what had happened? Even the Immortal Palace had been forced out of the Avalon of 5 elements after 2 consecutive king deaths. Their king was killed by Han Fei on the spot, and the latter still clamored for revenge afterward. Han Fei's way of doing things terrified many people in the Avalon of 5 elements. Someone exclaimed in horror, "Devil, Han Fei of the Avengers is a big devil." Someone was horrified. Demon Han killed the king of the Avalon of 5 elements and robbed our resources. How dare such a ferocious demon call himself the king of humans? Someone hurriedly said, "Lower your voice. I don't know if Demon Han has left or not." Someone was already crying bitterly. Our king has fallen just like that? What about the Supreme Purity Palace? What about limitless heaven? Who's going to punish this demon? However, the death of a powerful individual was a huge matter, and only powerful individuals could participate in it. Among the honorables who had yet to leave the Avalon of 5 elements, there were some who were tempted. After Gong Zhan's death, were the various great techniques and absolute arts of the Avalon of 5 elements still in the Immortal Palace? If it weren't for the fear of Han Fei, the Immortal Palace would have been full of venerables. Ordinary people, on the other hand, only knew that the king had fallen and that the sky had fallen. This made them anxious and uneasy. Unfortunately, ordinary people had no idea what had happened. Apart from Han Fei shouting that he was the king of humans, no one else said anything. After that, no one else said anything. All ordinary people could do was wait for someone to say something to calm them down, or at least let them know what had happened and where they should go. Of course, while waiting for someone to take charge of the situation, most people chose to cultivate. After the death of 2 kings, there was a huge amount of King's Taoist rhymes in this place, and the spiritual energy in the air was much denser. Sitting cross-legged in the rain of blood, one had a high chance of breaking through. After about the time it took for an incense stick to burn, a venerable saw that there was no movement and climbed up the Immortal Palace. But when he looked, there was nothing at all. The moment he climbed up the Immortal Palace, someone shouted, "Get out of the way! This is the Immortal Palace of 5 elements. How can ordinary venerables climb it?" Buzz Ziliu, who had run far away, ran back when he saw that someone could climb up the Immortal Palace. Ziliu shouted, "I am Huang Ziliu, a disciple of the 5 Elements sect. My master died in the hands of the demon Han Fei. But dragons cannot be without a leader. The immortal palace of 5 elements is not a place that anyone can step foot in. I will stay here and wait for the powerful fighters from the Wuji heavens to uphold justice. Regardless of personality, the 5 elements sect's disciples were not weak in terms of strength. Otherwise, they would not have become a 5 elements sect disciple. Therefore, when Huang Ziliu appeared and took charge, the others did not immediately climb up the immortal palace because they did not know the situation and they did not have a legitimate reason to do so. After the time it took for half an incense stick to burn, the void broke open and Bei Luochen finally arrived. Huang Ziliu had some experience. The moment he saw Bei Luochen, he was stunned. Immediately after, he thought of something and immediately shouted, "Your Majesty, please uphold justice for my master." That demon Han Fei, in his madness, broke into the Avalon of 5 elements and killed my master, Gong Zhan. As a result, the Avalon of 5 elements is without a leader. Although I am a disciple of the 5 elements sect, I have not been able to take charge of the immortal palace. Your Majesty, please help me. Huang Ziliu was tearing up. Those who did not know better would think that he was heartbroken. However, how could Bei Luochen not know what he was thinking after reading between the lines? Bei Luochen said, "You said that Han Fei broke into the Avalon of 5 elements? Not Wang Yijian?" Wang Yijian? Huang Ziliu shook his head. Your Majesty, I saw Han Fei appear on the immortal palace with my own eyes. I can't be wrong. That Han Fei was arrogant and said that he was the human king of this generation. He wanted to destroy Tai Qing, kill Wuji, and unify the 36 immortal palaces. Oomph! Huang Ziliu felt his legs turn to jelly when Luochen snorted. He immediately knelt on the ground. This was the first time he felt the aura of an emperor. Bei Luochen said indifferently, "How dare an ignorant child call himself the human king? You really overestimate yourself." Bei Luochen tossed a jade slip to Huang Ziliu. "This is the power of my blade. It can help you suppress the Avalon of 5 elements for a period of time. A Pioneer Sea Realm expert will not attack the weak. Don't panic, I will arrange for someone to take care of it." Huang Ziliu's heart trembled and his mind was filled with joy. This meant that he had obtained the emperor's approval and could rightfully control the immortal palace. He could freely control the power of the immortal palace? Thank you, Your Majesty. Bei Luochen ignored Huang Ziliu and scanned the area. Indeed, he did not feel any immortal spiritual energy or killing intent. At this moment, he had a bad feeling. Wasn't Han Fei a little too strong? It was not impossible for him to kill Li Chaofeng, but he had only become a human king a few decades ago. How could he kill Li Chaofeng and suppress Gong Zhan? After all, this was Gong Zhan's immortal palace. Gong Zhan had lost in his own territory. Was Gong Zhan too weak, or was Han Fei too strong? Without Wang Yijian's help, Han Fei alone could kill 2 human kings in such a short period of time. Han Fei's strength had to be reevaluated. Unfortunately, Bei Luochen lost track of Han Fei and Wang Yijian again. At this moment, Bei Luochen recalled Han Fei's threat through Wang Yijian and could not help but frown. Han Fei was a scourge after all. He had wanted to force Han Fei to reveal himself, but he had driven him crazy first. With a thought, Bei Luochen's shadow expanded infinitely until it almost covered half of the Avalon of 5 elements. Many people in the Avalon of 5 elements fell to their knees when they saw this. They felt that this was a miracle. However, Bei Luochen said, "I am the founding emperor of the Wuji heavens. Han Fei of the human race harbors evil intentions and has fallen to the demonic path. He intends to stir up internal strife among the human race. I will lead the 36 mysterious Sky Kings to attack and capture this demon. A battle between the strong does not endanger the lives of the people. Do not panic. After I kill this demon, the Avalon of 5 elements will be restored." He's actually an emperor? The legendary heaven-creating divine warrior? Since he's an emperor, he must be helpless. Han Fei overestimated himself and called himself the human king. It turns out that he has fallen to the demonic path. Han Fei is obviously a big demon. He massacred the Avalon of 5 elements for no reason. How ridiculous! Countless people discussed this. Of course, there were also some who had doubts. Han Fei said that the Great Purity Wuji was bad, and the Great Purity Wuji said that Han Fei had fallen to the demonic path. Who could say which side was bad? Did the stronger side have the final say? However, in the midst of the crowd's anger, these people kept their thoughts to themselves even if they had other thoughts. Since neither side could threaten the lives of ordinary people, it was at least a blessing in disguise. However, Bei Luochen turned around and split into three, heading straight for the Berserk Corpse, Blood Fiend, and Spirit Refinement Immortal Palaces. Since he could not catch Han Fei and Wang Yijian, he could not allow them to threaten the safety of the Wuji heavens. Half a month later, Han Fei appeared in Marshall the Arch-City and warned the Outer Domain Immortal Palaces that anyone who blindly followed the Great Purity Wuji and tried to harm the Yin-Yang Heaven would be killed without mercy. At the same time, Han Fei dumped the treasures he had obtained from the Medicine King Heaven, the Avalon of 5 Elements, and the other immortal kings in Marshall the Arch-City. Apart from the true sea-quelling bizarre treasures and supreme-grade weapons, everything that was useless to the construction of the Source World was dumped. If it wasn't for dumping, he wouldn't have known, but the moment it happened, he was shocked. The top-grade resources that Han Fei had plundered were sold for more than 500 million supreme-grade spirit stones. As for the rest, a large portion of them did not meet the standard and were not accepted at all. Han Fei planned to give them all away after he saved the Yin-Yang Heaven. Han Fei only stayed in Marshall the Arch-City for a day before disappearing again. In an instant, the immortal kings of the 13 outer domains were like ants on a hot pan. Some even started to visit. Han Fei was crazy. He would kill anyone who dared to get close to the Great Purity Wuji. Most importantly, they were just average immortal kings. If Han Fei really attacked, what could they do? Therefore, many immortal palaces immediately expressed that they would not participate in this matter. They could not stand it. No matter how bad the Wuji heavens was, it was still one of the leaders of the 36 mysterious heavens of the human race. It was impossible for them to forcibly attack the immortal palaces. But Han Fei was not so sure. When he went crazy, he would kill 1 or 2 immortal kings for them to see. Would they be afraid? But because of this, Han Fei's name gradually began to spread among the 36 mysterious heavens. The captain of the Avengers, Han Fei, became Demon Han. Chapter 1940. In the Mist Sea. In a certain space node, Han Fei was standing in his origin world. Bei Luochen's power made him realize that he wasn't strong enough yet, so he needed to continue to strengthen his origin world first. Before that, a string of data appeared in Han Fei's eyes. Owner Han Fei level greater than 93, C expansion, C family tree 980006, chaotic energy 17156, spiritual power 665568, perception range greater than 700,000 kilometers, strength greater than 183,209 waves, first spiritual heritage unknown, second spiritual heritage unknown, first spiritual beast, twin yin-yang spirit swallowing fish, level 87. Second spiritual beast, Emperor Sparrow, level 89. Main art, Void Descent, level 7 of Void Fishing, King level, Divine Quality. Huh? Suddenly, Han Fei was stunned. He was in the sea expansion realm. But he was level 90 before, and now he suddenly became level 93. He hadn't checked his status for a long time, and this time, he realized something. Yes, the cultivation level didn't disappear, but the calculation method of the sea expansion realm had changed. In the sea expansion realm, the level would be calculated according to the size of the origin sea. But on second thought, Han Fei felt that something was wrong. Because he remembered that the water fairy told him that she almost passed the tribulation and became an emperor. However, how big was the water fairy's origin sea? If it was 10,000 kilometers per level, wouldn't it take 100,000 kilometers for her to pass the tribulation? Therefore, it was possible that most sea expansion realm experts didn't know the real cultivation method of the sea expansion realm. They just thought that they could open the sky and become emperor, so they tried, but it turned out that they couldn't. In places like the Yin-Yang Heaven and the Waterwood Heaven, There were few talents and they didn't even have enough history to know this secret. Therefore, the cultivation of the sea expansion realm was like a blind man touching an elephant. In addition, after he opened the sea, his origin sea had exceeded 10,000 kilometers, but why didn't it show level 91? Did it mean that the calculation of the sea expansion realm not only depended on the size of the origin sea, but also the amount of chaotic energy? Han Fei's eyes glittered. So, in fact, if he was willing to use all the resources he got to expand the source world, he could actually level up quickly. However, Han Fei glanced at his origin world and found that it was slightly foggy, which made him realize that it was probably because he hadn't set up a layout in the 20,000 kilometers that he had explored, so his origin sea wasn't solid enough and thus foggy. Thinking of this reason, Han Fei didn't intend to expand the origin sea immediately. After all, as long as he had energy and ultra-quality spiritual stones, he could expand his origin sea. After all, Forge the Universe had been fused with his origin sea. In addition to the changes in levels, Han Fei suddenly understood the way to quickly advance to the Pioneer Sea realm. Other than that, although the amount of primal chaos chi had increased, his origin sea had also grown bigger. He really wanted to spend 10,000 strands of primal chaos chi to upgrade the chain of time in his origin sea. However, Han Fei couldn't help but feel worried if he only had 7,000 strands of chaotic energy left to support the source world for 30,000 kilometers. In the future, when he had more primal chaos chi, he would consider upgrading the chain of time. The improvement of his soul power was within his expectation. After all, he had killed more than one king and obtained a lot of spiritual pills and medicines. The improvement of his strength was due to the minor success of the void refining art, which made him have a big breakthrough. To Han Fei's surprise, the Pioneer Sea realm didn't seem to have an upper limit of strength. Even when he was at the beginning of level 90, he could cultivate to the strength of 160,000 waves. It seemed that this level could only be used to measure one's level. But he didn't care. His spiritual heritage was still unknown, and Han Fei was used to it. As for the Emperor Sparrow breaking through to the half-king level, that was a long time ago. Little Black and Little White weren't slow either. Even the nine-tailed mantis shrimp and the others had all reached a higher level after so many years of training. Even the nine-tailed mantis shrimp had surpassed Little Black and Little White and reached level 88. Little Gold, Little Fatty, and Simp had also reached level 87, 86, and 86 respectively. In the end, they were all legendary creatures, the latecomers catching up. With enough experience, they could still catch up. It was just that the time given to them was too short. Otherwise, if Han Fei had another 10 years, he was confident that they could all reach the half-king level. After reviewing his information, Han Fei thought of something. In this source world, the ground in some places was collapsing, and the ground in some places was bulging. There were meteorites, and as for the mountain passes, they were condensed into volcanic areas. There were strange peaks covered with cold crystals and turned into snow-capped mountains. There were rivers emerging on the earth, and there were desolate swamps on the surface. Seawater was emerging, and underground springs were flowing. Plants were growing and gardens were being developed. One after another, long dragons formed by supreme-grade spirit stones were scattered among the mountains, rivers, and lands. Han Fei seemed to be immersed in the pleasure of creating a world and didn't realize that the mist in his source world was quickly dissipating. Among the crew members of the Avenger who were cultivating in Han Fei's source sea, the Insect King and Zi Luo were the first to notice that something was wrong. The Insect King said, "Have you noticed that the Human King's source sea seems to be more agile than before?" Zi Luo exclaimed, "Huh? Do you have this feeling too?" "Me too, but we don't seem to have changed much here. I feel an inexplicable vitality, which seems to be connected to this place where we are." Luo Xiaobai frowned slightly and tried to detect it with her perception, but she found nothing. The Void Vine also said, "I didn't find anything wrong. The Human King doesn't allow us to leave this delimited island. Otherwise, I could have explored it." Zhang Xuanyu said angrily, "What? Is Han Fei's source sea for you to explore?" The Void Vine quickly chuckled. "Of course not. How dare I explore Master Human King's source sea?" Zhang Xuanyu pushed Lu Renkuang and said, "Do you feel anything wrong?" Lu Renkuang shrugged. "No. Who cares if he has it or not, we can just ask him later." Hearing this, Zhang Xuanyu immediately clapped his hands with Lu Renkuang in agreement. "That's true. We're brothers. Why don't we just ask?" They didn't even bother to think about it. Even Luo Xiaobai felt relieved when she heard this. Since the Insect King and Zi Luo said there were changes, this change was probably good. Anyway, Han Fei would tell them. Time passed. Han Fei was immersed in creating the world for more than 10 days before he suddenly woke up. However, when Han Fei woke up and looked down at the mountains and rivers here, he felt that this world seemed to be a bit familiar. But he didn't care. After Han Fei came back to his senses, the first thing he found was that the mist had disappeared. If it weren't for the clear sky and the bright sun, Han Fei would have felt that this place was really a fairyland. In addition to the beauty of the fairyland, Han Fei could also feel that his source world was slowly generating power, and there seemed to be an invisible Taoist aura being born. In addition, Han Fei had an epiphany and felt that his incomparably powerful physique was relaxed. It was not that his physique was not strong, but that it used to be tight, but now it was much more relaxed. It was like a river that was filled with water, but now it was a river that was filled with water. The comfort had increased a lot, but it still felt a little tight. Han Fei seemed to understand that with his current strength, level 93 might not be enough, so he felt a little tight. But when Han Fei wanted to develop the Source Sea with resources again, he was dumbfounded to find that he had a huge amount of resources except for the one that fed the demon purification pot, and there were less than 100 million ultra-quality spiritual stones left. Han Fei couldn't help but curse. "I knew it. I'll always run out of ultra-quality spiritual stones. It seems that the resources I got are still not enough." Han Fei smiled slightly. But it didn't matter. Now he had a lot of enemies, and he could rob a lot of resources. He couldn't help but wonder if the heaven-opening state powerhouses who had been born had understood this truth long ago, so they had long gone to develop the Source Sea in this way. Unfortunately, no one would tell him that he had to walk this path by himself. After sorting out his own situation, Han Fei took out a fish skin map, on which thousands of routes were marked with the location of the Martial Emperor City as the center, as well as the residences of the major immortal palaces, the 100 Demons clan, the Seabed Human clan, and the Mermaid Royal clan. This was naturally the route map that Han Fei bought in the Martial Emperor City, which had been slowly explored by countless ancestors generation after generation. Han Fei took out the nautical panorama, and in the blink of an eye, the nautical panorama pointed to an area between the 100 Flowers Palace and the 10,000 Poison Heaven. Outside the 100 Flowers Palace, 3 large ships engraved with flame symbols were wandering. On the ship, Shui Ran, the captain of the Red Fire Pirates, was shouting, "Remember to be fast, accurate, and ruthless on this trip to the 100 Flowers Palace. I will contain Hua Qianyue, and you must seize this cargo ship as soon as possible." "Captain." Amidst the shouting, Shui Ran's lips curled up in satisfaction. It wasn't easy to do business now, and the outer regions were becoming more and more turbulent. It shouldn't be difficult for him to make a fortune while the Avalon of 5 elements was in chaos. Just as Shui Ran was thinking about how smart he was, he suddenly heard a voice. "Shui Ran, long time no see." Like a bolt from the blue, Shui Ran didn't dare to turn his head. In an instant he felt cold sweat all over his body. Hearing the voice, he knew who it was. At this moment, all the venerables on the 3 ships of the Red Fire Pirates were all silent. They were all scared. Shui Ran turned his head with difficulty and saw that Han Fei was standing on the mast of his fire god, smiling at him. Gulp, Shui Ran said with difficulty, "Han Fei." Han Fei smiled. "I'll give you a choice. I'll give you a choice. Submit to me or die." Chapter 1941. How could Shui Ran expect to meet Han Fei here? The rise of the Avengers was too fast. After fighting with Han Fei once, Shui Ran didn't want to meet Han Fei again. Shui Ran had never expected that he would meet Han Fei. After massacring Gong Zhan and Li Chaofeng, this guy had caused civil strife in the human race. Shouldn't he be thinking about how to compete with the Tai Ching Wuji? Why was he here? Of course, Shui Ran didn't believe it was an accident. There were countless routes in the vast sea. How could he meet Han Fei so coincidentally? Since it wasn't an accident, it meant that Han Fei was here for him. Hearing Han Fei's question of surrender or die, Shui Ran's heart sank. Did this guy want to subdue him? Shui Ran knew that he was no match for Han Fei. The fact that this guy could kill Gong Zhan in the Avalon of 5 elements was enough to prove that Han Fei was no longer someone he could deal with. Shui Ran said, "Brother Han, we don't get to know each other without a fight. If you have any orders, just tell me." Shui Ran was terrified. He had no choice but to be terrified. If he dared to be tough with Han Fei, he would be dead. However, Han Fei paid no attention to Shui Ran, and he continued, "I'll give you one more chance. Submit or die." Shui Ran's eyelids twitched. After staring at Han Fei for a while, he finally chose to lower his noble head. The Red Fire Pirates choose to surrender. Han Fei smiled and said, "Remember your choice. If you betray me, I'll kill you without mercy. Since I can find you once, I can find you 10 times. Don't think that I can't find you if you hide. You can try." Shui Ran smiled bitterly. He couldn't refute this. After all, his operation was confidential. Only Shui Ran knew the target before he took action. He wouldn't reveal it to anyone else. Shui Ran had no choice but to be found under such circumstances. He thought to himself, Han Fei isn't weak, so I'll just surrender. Han Fei smiled. In the future, don't fight for resources like the 100 Flowers Palace. Wait for me outside Dream Weaver. With that said, Han Fei threw a jade slip to Shui Ran, which was the location he marked. When Shui Ran heard this, he was stunned. Did this mean that Han Fei was going to attack Dream Weaving Sky? That wasn't an immortal palace on the level of the Avalon of 5 elements. It was the extremely strange Dreamweaver Sky, one of the immortal palaces in the inner region. How could anyone from the inner territory compare to this? Even though Yu Meng of Dreamweaver Sky had been killed by Han Fei, there were still more than 2 kings of Dreamweaver Sky. Shui Ran's heart sank, and he couldn't help but say, "Brother Han, wouldn't it be too risky for my Crimson Flame pirates to go alone?" "Don't worry. You won't be the only one going." Hearing this, Shui Ran was immediately relieved. It seemed that the Red Fire Pirates would not be the only one who would suffer. He just didn't know which other families were going to suffer. Han Fei was going to take down Dream Weaver. He needed to pick a troublemaker from both the outer and inner realms. Since you all want to ambush me, suppress me, wish to go against my Yin Yang Sky, then I'll give it to you. In that case, I will first destroy your palace, rob you of your resources, and destroy your sect. Although Han Fei had already made up his mind, he was not stupid. The Avalon of 5 elements still paled in comparison to the Dreamweaver Avalon. He could barge into the 5 elements immortal palace and kill Gong Zhan. However, that didn't mean that he could force his way into the Dreamweaver immortal palace and kill Sha Jimeng. Gong Zhan didn't have a peerless illusion technique like Sha Jimeng, nor did he have the special ability to enter people's dreams. Even if Han Fei did it himself, he had to be very careful. However, Han Fei had to go this time. Since the outer area had been intimidated, the inner area couldn't be allowed to attack the Sword God's 4 palaces. Therefore, Wang Yijian's identity was about to reappear. Of course, before that, Han Fei had a few other things to do. Myriad Poison Heaven, Spider King City, Great Desolate Swamp. Han Fei was already familiar with this place. Not long after Han Fei stood on a mountain peak, he saw Huang Jie slowly walking towards the cliff Han Fei was standing on with a cane. Huang Jie said as he walked, "I didn't expect you to grow so fast. You killed 2 kings in a row. Even I am curious about what realm your strength has reached." Han Fei smiled faintly. "I'm still a long way from the peak of the Sea Expansion realm." "Ha!" Huang Jie almost blew his beard. "How long has it been since you became a king? You're already thinking about the peak of the Sea Expansion realm?" To be honest, few people in the entire chaotic vast sea knew what the peak of the Sea Expansion realm was like. Huang Jie didn't ask anymore. Han Fei had killed 2 kings in a row, which was enough to prove his strength. According to the strength of the two kings who had died, Han Fei's ranking in the sea expansion realm was at least within the top 30. Huang Jie suspected that he might even be within the top 20. After all, the yin-yang sky had disappeared for 80,000 years. It wasn't easy for a peerless heavenly talent to appear, so it was reasonable for this heavenly talent to be a little beyond ordinary people's expectations. Otherwise, how could Han Fei dare to compete with the Grand Pure Wuji? Huang Jie said, "Okay, you're here to return my imperial purple smoke furnace, right?" Han Fei tossed it casually and then said, "The effect of this furnace doesn't seem to be as strong as it was at the beginning." Huang Jie didn't care. That's because the power of the pills in the furnace has been refined countless times. Your body has absorbed most of it, so you feel that its effect is not as strong. However, for alchemy, this furnace is still a treasure. Han Fei didn't know how to refine pills, so he just threw the furnace over and said, "I'll return it to you." Huang Jie stepped forward and touched the imperial purple smoke furnace with his hand. He grinned and said with mixed feelings, "Little Z, I didn't expect that after so many years, you still return to my hands. How could that old witch Chiu know how to use it? From now on, let me accompany you to create another legend." Han Fei was speechless when he saw Huang Jie's gentle care for the imperial purple smoke furnace. If he didn't know better, he would think that he was seeing his wife. Han Fei wasn't in a hurry. After Huang Jie finished admiring it, he said, "Senior, is the 9-poison treasure silkworm ready?" Huang Jie snickered. "Of course, this king's words naturally count." Huang Jie waved his hand and put away the imperial purple smoke furnace. With a flip of his hand, a delicate and small golden cage appeared in his hand. In the cage, there was a chubby red silkworm baby. Information appeared in Han Fei's eyes. Name: 9-poison treasure silkworm. Introduction: an insect that is immune to all poisons. It can swallow all poisons in the world. It grows up by eating poisons and changes because of poisons. The 9-poison treasure silkworm doesn't have a real body. Everything it sees is a soul. This insect can live in the soul of a living creature and guard the host's soul. It must be fed with spiritual energy, poisons, chaotic energy, etc. Once the poisons it feeds exceed the tolerance of the 9-poison treasure silkworm, it will stop detoxifying and fall into a short sleep to consume the poisons in its body. Level 79 quality legendary, upgradable. Effect: inedible collectibles 9-poison treasure pouch. Remarks: the 9-poison treasure silkworm is not invincible. Once the poisons are too strong, the 9-poison treasure silkworm may fall into a deep sleep. When Han Fei saw the information of the 9-poison treasure silkworm, he couldn't help but frown. Although the 9-poison treasure silkworm could only swallow and decompose a limited amount of poisons, it wouldn't die. This was a little different from the characteristics of the heaven spirit detoxifying insect, but the two were probably equally strong. The heaven spirit detoxifying insect died easily, but it ate a lot of poisons. And this thing might not eat enough poisons, but it wouldn't die easily. The most important thing was that the 9-poison treasure silkworm could protect the host's soul, which was the most important thing. Han Fei couldn't help asking, "How do I recognize it as its master?" Huang Jie said, "Give it a drop of essence blood and a wisp of soul." Han Fei nodded slightly. Because everything was within his sight, he wasn't afraid that Huang Jie had any bad intentions. When a drop of essence blood and a wisp of soul entered the cage, the 9-poison treasure silkworm sucked the essence blood and soul into its body like bubbles. Then, before the cage was opened, the 9-poison treasure silkworm directly turned into a blue mist, drilled out of the cage, and drilled between Han Fei's eyebrows. Han Fei didn't stop it. He didn't even feel anything. But when he was meditating, if he looked carefully, he would see a chubby little insect hiding in the depths of his soul. Han Fei couldn't help but be surprised. "That's it?" Huang Jie nodded. "That's it. The 9-poison treasure silkworm is precious because it's hard to find in the world. This one has already been raised by me and fed all kinds of strange poisons. It's only one step away from a breakthrough. In the future, you only need to feed it a little, and it will be of great help to you. Now, even in the entire chaotic ocean, I'm afraid there are few poisons that can seriously injure you. Han Fei couldn't help but ask, Senior, didn't you say you were going to tell me about soul poisons? Huang Jie smiled. I've already prepared it for you. With that, Huang Jie handed out a jade slip and said, You'll understand after you take a look. Han Fei picked up the jade slip, scanned it with his perception, and smiled. In that case, I'll take it. Han Fei was about to leave when he heard Huang Jie say, I'm afraid it's difficult to kill a heaven-opening state expert with poison. At most, I can keep him in check for a moment. It's a pity that I haven't entered the heaven-opening state. Otherwise, I can try to kill a heaven-opening state expert with poison. Han Fei's heart did a flip. After seeing Bei Luochen's means, Han Fei felt that it was already very good to be able to keep him in check for a moment. So, Han Fei smiled and said, Got it. Chapter 1942. When Han Fei finished reading the contents of the jade slip given by Huang Jie, he found that soul poison was not the kind of poison he thought it was. For example, the stench could be said to be a kind of soul poison. Soul poison, in a general sense, was any power that could make the soul tremble and uncomfortable through sight, smell, hearing, etc. Why was this power called poison? For example, when a kind of stench was so stinky that the soul couldn't help but want to vomit, it would greatly affect the power of the soul. Of course, the ways in which the soul poison appeared might not be as simple as these. There were also those that could directly affect one's soul, such as illusions, dreams, visualizations, and so on. There were many other ways to poison one. Yes, in the eyes of the 9 poison treasure silkworm, these were all poisons. And it could detoxify all these poisons. In a sense, with the 9 poison treasure silkworm, he could ignore great techniques such as illusions. The biggest difference between soul poison and ordinary poison was that ordinary poisons had a great effect on the body, but soul poison could destroy the soul. However, divine soul poisons could destroy one's divine soul. If used in large quantities, it could even cause permanent damage to one's divine soul. The most dangerous thing was that it would directly cause the soul to wither, which was almost no different from killing the enemy with the body. Now that Han Fei had the 9 poison treasure silkworm, it was the perfect time, because the dream-weaving sky that he was about to go to was an immortal palace that specialized in illusions and dreams. 3 days later, in a certain sea area outside the Xianming sky, the Gale pirates were traveling through the void. Because they had just plundered a batch of resources, they were now avoiding the pursuit of the kings of the Xianming sky. Chen Guangjia laughed and said, Brothers, take a shortcut and return to the martial emperor city through our own route. Everyone will be rewarded with 200,000 ultra-quality spiritual stones for this big profit. All hail the captain. Not long after the whole Gale pirate group left the sea route, a voice suddenly rang out behind Shen Guangjia while he was secretly taking inventory of his harvest. You're right. So, looted a lot of resources. There must be more than 100 million in this batch, right? Who is it? Chen Guangjia was shocked. He turned around abruptly, only to see Han Fei smiling at him with his hands behind his back. Hiss, Chen Guangjia's face turned green. Fuck, when did this guy come? Gulp, Chen Guangjia gulped. Brother Han, long time no see. There might have been some misunderstandings between us in the past. Here, these are some resources that I've just obtained. Consider them my apologies to Brother Han. Chen Guangjia was on the verge of tears. Was it easy for him? He had just robbed a batch of resources, but in the blink of an eye, he had to give them away. Even so, he still had to guard against Han Fei's attack. He had already made up his mind. As long as he could escape, he would not turn back. Han Fei said with a smile, Don't even think about it. If you can run away, I won't give you any resources. With that, Han Fei took the resources Chen Guangjia handed over and scanned them with his perception. He couldn't help but nod in satisfaction. Chen, is it really worth it for you to be ecstatic over such a small thing? Chen Guangjia's eyelids twitched. You don't even want something that's worth more than 100 million top-grade spirit stones? But on second thought, it made sense. Han Fei was a great villain who fought in the Avalon of 5 Elements and killed Gong Zhan and Li Chaofeng. The outside world called him Demon Han. God knew how many resources he could get from conquering a divine palace. Chen Guangjia couldn't help but smile awkwardly. The Gale pirates are certainly not as powerful as Brother Han. You can conquer the divine palace all by yourself. You can have as many resources as you want. Han Fei chuckled. Okay, enough with the nonsense. Do you want resources that are several times more abundant than this? Chen Guangjia was intrigued. What did he mean? Han Fei didn't beat around the bush. If you submit to me, you will get more in return than this. You may even have the opportunity to loot the divine palace. You could just Chen Guangjia. At that moment, Chen Guangjia felt that 10,000 iron-head fish were galloping in his heart. Do I have a choice? Although he also wanted to run, as Han Fei said, how could he run away? This guy killed 2 lords in a row. Did one of them escape? What could Chen Guangjia do in desperation? After more than 10 minutes, Chen Guangjia finally lowered his head. From today on, the Gale pirates will submit to the Avenger pirates. The corners of Han Fei's mouth curled up slightly. Remember your promise. If I can find you once, I can find you twice. Then he casually threw a jade slip to Chen Guangjia and said, wait for me here. Don't waste any time. Chen Guangjia took the jade slip, scanned it with his perception, and was shocked. Isn't this the dream-weaving sky? Zhou Qin, the captain of the Misfortune Pirates. He didn't know if it was because of his name, but this guy had always been unlucky. But even if he was unlucky, he could still cultivate to the Pioneer Sea realm and not be killed by the heavenly tribulation. His potential was obvious. Because of his bad luck, Zhou Qin named his pirate crew Misfortune, hoping to bring his bad luck to others. At this moment, Zhou Qin led the Misfortune Pirates and was about to attack the big ship of the Bloody Evil Heaven. Behind Zhou Qin, a deputy captain said, Captain, are we really going to attack the Bloody Evil Heaven? The Bloody Evil Heaven is not to be trifled with. Zhou Qin said indifferently, it doesn't matter. It is said that the king of the Bloody Evil Heaven, Yan Wen, has already run away after hearing that Han Fei attacked the Avalon of 5 elements. Now, the Bloody Evil Heaven must be in a panic. Taking this opportunity to plunder, it is very profitable. Even if I really meet Yan Wen, I am not afraid of him. Let's go. The deputy captain muttered, I always feel that something is wrong. Something is wrong. Why would Yan Wen run when the Avalon of 5 elements appears? Zhou Qin sneered. Gong Zhan is not a good person. How good can Yan Wen be? Most likely he has joined the Wuji Heaven. He is afraid that Han Fei will attack them, so he ran away when he heard the news. Even though Zhou Qin said so, many of his subordinates still expressed doubts about this operation. The reason was that the people of the Bloody Evil Heaven were not to be trifled with. But the more important reason was that their captain was not very lucky. On average, it would be good if he could succeed once in every 3 hunts. This time, he was going to do something big. Who knew if he could succeed? Someone thought, I think we should trust the captain. Our captain is good in every way except for his bad luck. Someone nodded. The benefits given to us are also good. Every time we loot, 40% of the resources are given to us. Someone sighed. Yes, our captain is strong. If it weren't for his bad luck, he might have entered the top 3 of the top 10 pirate groups. Someone laughed and said, damn. What are we afraid of? After all these years, although there are many small troubles, at least nothing big has happened. Just as everyone was chatting, suddenly, a golden light fell on the fence of the Misfortune with a swish. Who is it? Before Zhou Qin moved, the group of venerables' expressions changed drastically and they became vigilant. When Zhou Qin looked back, his left eye twitched violently, thinking that his luck was too bad this time. Except for Zhou Qin, the faces of the venerables all turned green. Han Fei? Why is his luck so bad this time? The deputy captain swallowed and looked at Zhou Qin, asking, what should we do? Zhou Qin thought for a moment and cupped his hands at Han Fei. Zhou Qin of the Misfortune greets Brother Han. Han Fei grinned. Brother Zhou, how elegant. Are you going to the Blood Evil Heaven? Zhou Qin nodded. Yes. Han Fei smiled and said, Brother Zhou, the Blood Evil Heaven is just a foreign immortal palace. Why don't we try somewhere else? Zhou Chen was silent for a moment. Brother Han, what do you suggest? Han Fei threw out a jade slip and said, I heard that Sha Jiming of the Dream Weaver Sky is not at home. Zhou Chen, the Venerable's faces turned green. Here came someone even more ruthless. Their captain wanted to loot the Blood Evil Heaven, but now there was someone who wanted to loot the Dream Weaver Sky. Oh no, if it was Han Fei, he would probably attack the Dreamweaver Sky. After all, Han Fei had already attacked the Avalon of 5 elements. The Venerables all looked at Zhou Chen, thinking that their captain was so lucky. Zhou Chen looked at Han Fei. What if I don't go? Han Fei smiled and looked up at the sky. I heard that the sky is crying. It's quite spectacular. Brother Zhou, what do you think? I think we can set off immediately. The Venerable Ones suddenly felt a tinge of sorrow in their hearts. Their captain's luck was really bad. However, Han Fei's expression changed slightly just now. He actually felt a trace of threat. This made him look at Zhou Chen in a new light. This guy's true strength was probably problematic. Of course, Han Fei didn't point it out. Instead, he smiled and said, Don't worry, you're not the only one. This trip won't be a loss. Of course, you don't have to go as long as you think you can beat me. Before he finished speaking, there was a flash of golden light, and Han Fei disappeared. After Han Fei left, Zhou Chen couldn't help but fall silent. Dreamweaver Sky? Han Fei was really ambitious. The vice captain was speechless. Captain, are we going just like that? Why don't we go back to Martial Emperor City? Zhou Chen said, Let's go. If we don't rob the Blood Evil Heaven, we can rob the Dreamweaver Sky. Another 3 days later, on a certain public route in the Sea of Fog, a few beautiful large ships sailed past. Upon a closer look, the leading ship was carved with a blue phoenix. It was the mystic phoenix of the witch pirates. Behind this ship, the pearl and the dragon dance followed. On the mystic phoenix, Long Wu was fiddling with a large pot with a lot of seasonings in it. Long Wu shouted, Phoenix King, come and have some hot pot? Xian Feng shook her head slightly. You guys eat. Long Wu sighed and said, Phoenix King, we're going all out on this trip. Relax a little. This is Palace Master's unique delicacy, hot pot. It's really delicious. Shut up. Xian Feng looked back at Long Wu. Don't say that again. Long Wu stuck out her tongue, thinking, that's right. Han Fei didn't become a king in the past, but now that he had, who wouldn't be moved by his strength? How could they not recognize such a palace master? Among the 4 female generals of the witch pirates, 2 of them hadn't seen Han Fei yet. One of them said, Long Wu, are you sure that palace master was only a venerable when you saw him? How many years has it been? He has become a king in only 30 years? Long Wu said, Han Yue, don't you believe me? Pearl, tell me, palace master pretended to be a beginner venerable at that time. Suddenly, everyone's faces changed. They looked back and saw that on the mast, the golden light dissipated, and a slender figure appeared in everyone's sight. Immediately on the mystic phoenix, all the venerables shouted, Who is it? Pearl, who had been eating hot pot and hadn't spoken, suddenly said, This man is our king. Chapter 1943. Han Fei. The Palace Master? Gosh. But the Master of Yin Yang? In an instant, a group of people on the Dark Phoenix exclaimed in surprise. Long Wu and the others were also shocked. Who would have thought that Han Fei would suddenly appear? Pearl, Long Wu, and the others looked up at him with their eyes wide open. Han Fei wasn't that handsome, but his temperament was outstanding. Now that he had become a king, how could ordinary people ignore him? Plus, Han Fei had killed kings consecutively. Everyone on the ship couldn't help but be amazed and in awe. Even Xian Feng was a bit surprised. She bowed slightly. Greetings, Palace Master. Han Fei shook his head calmly. I don't even know if the Yin Yang Heaven can be saved. The witch pirates don't need to acknowledge me as their Palace Master for now. Xian Feng's eyes narrowed slightly. There seemed to be more to Han Fei's words. However, it wasn't convenient to discuss it now. Xianfeng said, "After all, everyone here is from the Lunar Academy. We may not recognize them outside, but we still have to distinguish our identities here. May I know why you're here, Palace Master?" Han Fei didn't argue with Xianfeng. Instead, he threw a jade slip to her and said, "Attack Dreamweave. Wait for me here." Xianfeng was speechless. Attack Dreamweaver? Wasn't it enough after attacking the Avalon of 5 elements? Now he wanted to attack Dreamweaver in the inner area? Unlike the Avalon of 5 elements, the Dreamweaver sky was an inner domain immortal palace. Long Wu and the others were also fascinated. Why was he so excited right from the start? This man was as crazy as he was when they first met. Long Wu and Pearl were already shocked when Han Fei defeated the 4 frenzied kings. Now, they were going to attack an immortal palace. Just with the few of them? How could he do that? Xianfeng couldn't help but say, "Palace Master, Dreamweaver isn't the Avalon of 5 elements." Han Fei said indifferently, "Don't worry. The Misfortune, Gale, and Scarlet Fire Pirates will be with you. The 4 kings will attack the city, plunder resources, and plunder Dreamweaver. I'll deal with Dreamweaver Immortal Palace." Even Xianfeng was surprised. What? Among the top 10 pirate groups, Han Fei had subdued 3 more. However, Xianfeng seemed to understand that Han Fei seemed to be different from ordinary people. As long as he could find the Red Fire Pirates, Shui Ran and the others definitely wouldn't be able to resist him. However, if he wanted to command the top 10 pirate groups, Han Fei must have some way to restrict them. Otherwise, according to the temperament of pirates, how could they be obedient to Han Fei's orders? Suddenly, Xianfeng seemed to understand something. How could Han Fei suddenly appear here? I've never had any way of contacting Han Fei. How did Han Fei find me? It seemed that Han Fei had some kind of tracking method that could find anyone he wanted. Because of this, these pirate groups surrendered to him. If the 4 pirate crews attacked at the same time, they might not be able to completely suppress an immortal palace. However, there was still Han Fei. With Han Fei's ability to kill his way into the 5 elements immortal palace, even if Sha Jiming was at home, she might not be able to deal with him. Xianfeng nodded slightly. "Yes, Palace Master." Han Fei glanced at the crowd and found that there were many peak-level explorers among the witch pirates. Finally, his eyes fell on the hot pot on Long Wu's side. He smiled, threw a sun moon shell, and said, "The seasoning is not enough. It's not tasty enough." Long Wu. Swish, with a flash of golden light, Han Fei disappeared without a trace. It was not until Han Fei disappeared that the people of the witch pirates came back to their senses for a long time, and then they burst into an uproar. 2 half-kings pulled Long Wu and said, "Little Wu, is this the Palace Master? He's so cool. He comes and goes without a trace." Long Wu came back to her senses, looked at the sun moon shell in her hand, and smiled. "He's at the Pioneer Sea realm. What do you think?" Pearl looked at Xianfeng thoughtfully. She was wondering what Han Fei meant when he said that the Yinyang sky might not be able to survive. Han Fei pondered. It was just Dreamweaver, and Yu Meng had already died in his hands. Apart from Sha Meng, there should only be 2 kings left. And he had found 4 kings and more than 400 venerables. No matter how strong Dreamweaver was, how could he resist such a force? Since Grand Pure One and Wuji both thought that he was easy to deal with, he had to teach them a lesson. The Avalon of 5 elements was just the beginning, and Dreamweaver was just a warning. Since they were going to fight, they might as well start now. 20 days later, outside Dreamweaver, in an area that obviously deviated from the normal route, several large ships broke through the void with a swish. As soon as Xianfeng and the others arrived, they found that as many as 9 ships were already docked here. As soon as Xianfeng landed, Chen Guangjia said, "Xianfeng, demon girl? It's been a long time." Shui Ran also appeared at the bow of the ship. "Tsk, more people are coming. It seems that Brother Han has put in a lot of effort to attack Dreamweaver this time." Zhou Qin of the Misfortune Pirates asked in a low voice, "Is anyone else coming?" Chen Guangjia shrugged. "I don't think so. Are we going to destroy Dreamweaver if we come again?" Shui Ran said, "The Grand Pure One and the other 4 palaces are hunting down the Sword God Palace. The inner region is empty, and Dream Weaver has 2 kings at most. With Brother Han, we have 5 kings. Even if Sha Jiming is at home, she won't be able to escape death." Zhou Chen said, "I don't kill ordinary people. If there are kings, I'll do it myself." Chen Guangjia said grumpily, "Old Zhou, enough. You'd better shut your mouth. If a king happens to be a guest at Dream Weaver, it'll all be your fault." Zhou Chen. At this moment, Shui Ran said, "Where's Brother Han? Why isn't he here yet?" Less than 10 breaths after Shui Ran's words, a golden light flashed, and a figure appeared. Everyone thought it was Han Fei, but when they saw who it was, they all gasped. "Hiss, the second sword god? King Slayer with 1 sword?" For a moment, the 4 kings felt as if they were facing a formidable enemy. This man's reputation was no better than Han Fei's. Medicine King Sky, known as the second sword god, had recently reappeared in the Jianghu. He wasn't someone that ordinary people could stop. Shui Ran cupped his hands. "Greetings, Senior Yijin." Chen Guangjia said, "Brother Wang, you killed Bei Xianbing with your sword. It's a pity that I didn't get to see you. Brother Wang, you're indeed extraordinary." Zhou Chen cupped his hands. "Greetings, Brother Wang." Xian Feng was confused. Didn't Wang Yijin appear in the same way as Han Fei? Xian Feng slightly nodded. "Brother Wang." Han Fei put his hands behind his back and let his white hair cover his face. When the wind blew, he waved his hand and threw out 4 jade slips. He said casually, "Han Fei has his own business to attend to. I'll lead the battle on this trip to Dreamweaver, and you can stall the venerables of Dreamweaver. The purpose of this trip is to rob the Dreamweaver Immortal Palace of resources and treasures. Just try not to hurt the weak." Everyone calmed down. If Han Fei didn't come, Wang Yijin would do the same. In terms of battle prowess, they were actually more convinced of Wang Yijin. With him around, they wouldn't have to worry even if the top 10 Pioneer Sea Realm experts came. As for where Han Fei went, they didn't want to know. Han Fei was ruthless, and it was better to be with a pure sword cultivator like Wang Yijin than with Han Fei. Anyway, for pirates, they would take whatever they could. Besides, they all understood Han Fei's intention. Killing King and Venerables was to intimidate the 36 Xuantians. He was clearly telling the others that whoever dared to collude with the Grand Pure Everlasting God would suffer the same fate as the Avalon of 5 Elements and Dreamweaver. Xian Feng asked, "When do we do it?" Han Fei tore open the void and said indifferently, "Let's wait." With that, Han Fei stepped into the void lightly and disappeared. When Han Fei left, Chen Guangjia said, "That's good. I've offended the Avengers before, and this time, we can improve our relationship. Furthermore, Brother Han was able to invite this person over. Your abilities are truly admirable." Shui Ran nodded slightly. "I agree. Dream Weaver, Immortal Dream City." Han Fei turned into an ordinary person and appeared in Immortal Dream City. Although he was going to take down Dream Weaver, it didn't mean he would underestimate it. The inner domain immortal palaces were indeed extraordinary. Immortal Dream City itself was surrounded by a large array, and he had been here for so many days just to break it. He had marked most of the resource targets in detail this time. How could he leave the good stuff for Shui Ran and the others to snatch? Of course, he would strike first to gain the upper hand. The last time he attacked the Avalon of 5 Elements, he hadn't been prepared enough. Otherwise, how could an immortal palace plunder a mere billion supreme-grade spirit stones? However, the reason why he brought the other pirate groups was naturally to warn the major immortal palaces, "I have many trump cards now, and my means are ruthless. I never play tricks with you. Anyone who dared to follow the Grand Pure Everlasting God and touch the Yin-Yang Heaven would be turned upside down." Chapter 1944. Although Dreamweaver Sky was an immortal palace that specialized in the path of illusions and dreams, not everyone in the immortal palace could walk the same path. There weren't many who could reach the peak of the path of illusions and dreams. Some people only pursued the Tao of the palace and didn't even know what they were really pursuing. Because the palace's specialty was creating illusions and dreams, most people could only go with the flow. Most people couldn't pursue this Tao, but they at least had some understanding of illusions. Han Fei shook his head slightly. It seems that the foreign palaces didn't tell ordinary people that cultivating the same Tao would lead to nothing but leaks in the end. The old turtle said, pursuing the same path doesn't necessarily lead to the same Tao, but even so, the probability of finding the same Tao is not small. Han Fei sighed slightly. It's a pity that I don't know if there's anyone walking the same Tao as me. Han Fei walked on the streets of Dream-Weaving Sky. At this moment, he was in the central area of Dream County, near the periphery of the Dream Immortal Palace. Outside the Dream Immortal Palace was a trial ground. It was open to everyone in Dream-Weaving Sky. As long as you thought you could pass this dream trial, you could come. Once you passed, you would have a meteoric rise. Han Fei had already calculated today. The hexagram was between inauspicious and great inauspicious. In the end, to make sure nothing went wrong, he added a few strands of chaotic energy and put his luck on the inauspicious hexagram. At this moment, he was waiting for an opportunity. When the scorching sun was at its brightest, he would break the protective array of Dream Immortal City. Han Fei stood in the air with his hands behind his back, waiting quietly. This was a very normal thing. People of Dream-Weaving Sky would look at their own palace in awe, and no one would think anything was different. But perhaps because of Han Fei's extraordinary temperament, a woman walked over from the void. The woman said, "Once you enter the Dream Immortal Palace, there will be no more worries. Are you here to explore the dream too?" Han Fei didn't expect that someone would come to find him, so he thought for a moment. Logically speaking, he was indeed here to explore the dream. After all, if he wanted to enter the Dream Immortal Palace, there would probably be a great illusion land waiting for him. So, Han Fei nodded slightly. "Yes, I'm going to see how strong the Tao of dream weaving is." Seeing Han Fei nod slightly, the woman couldn't help but feel a little strange. He thought in his heart, this fellow's strength has already attained the elementary exalt realm, so why haven't I encountered him in the past? Was it because he wanted to keep a low profile? However, the woman couldn't help but chuckle. The art of dream weaving? That is the palace master's unique great Tao. It is said that through the illusions of one's soul, one can spontaneously weave dreams. At the peak of this Tao, one can be trapped in eternal reincarnation. Han Fei chuckled. It sounds very powerful. Seeing that Han Fei didn't even look back and didn't seem to be interested in chatting with her, the woman curled her lips. "Fellow Taoist, it's getting late. Aren't you going to explore the dream?" Han Fei shook his head slightly. "I'm still a moment away." The woman was speechless. There was even a time limit for challenging a dream? This person is really strange. But this person is so cold, not quite the same as what I've seen before. However, if this person could successfully clear the dream, there would be a chance for them to meet again in the future. Otherwise, there was no point in not seeing him. After a while, when this woman arrived outside the Immortal Dream Array, she was immediately surrounded by a group of women. "Gui Shue, why are you so late? Everyone is waiting for you." "Yes, Gui Shue, you are finally willing to come to the dream. I bet you can definitely pass it. Gui Shue, if you pass the Immortal Dream Array, don't forget me." Outside the array, many people looked surprised. "Wow, is that Meng Gui Shue? It is said that she is a rare heavenly talent of the Dream Weaving Academy?" Someone sighed. "Yes, that's her. She didn't come here until she reached the Venerable Realm. She actually wants to directly become the Palace Master's personal disciple." Someone nodded. "If not, why wait until today? With her talent, she would have already succeeded." Hundreds of kilometers away, Han Fei watched Meng Guishue walk into the dream array and couldn't help grinning. "Ha! A once-in-a-thousand-years chosen one? What a pity." About half an hour later, Han Fei looked up several times. When he saw the scorching sun shining high and the clouds and mist dispersing, he smiled slightly. "It's time." Han Fei reached out his hand in the void, and hundreds of array patterns gathered. At the same time, the dream city suddenly trembled. In the sky, the scorching sun fell like red rain. Hum, 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 as if a heavenly fire tens of thousands of kilometers had suddenly descended, the temperature of the dream immortals was crazily soaring. In less than 10 seconds, the temperature of the dream immortals suddenly rose by 40 or 50 degrees. All of a sudden, a woman broke through the void from the immortal dream palace. As soon as she came out, she formed an array in her hand, and a pestle that looked like a flower was scattered in the void. When the pestle appeared, the entire periphery of the Dream Weaving Academy was covered in a layer of mist, covering the sky and blocking the Dream Immortal's palace. Han Fei slightly smiled. He had set up this array for more than half a month. How could it be easily blocked? The 2 jade slips in Han Fei's hand broke, and suddenly, tens of thousands of complicated arrays appeared in the Dream Immortal's palace. These arrays appeared one after another, each of which was a heavenly fire array, attracting the essence fire of the scorching sun. There were tens of thousands of them. The power of each array was comparable to the attack of a peak-stage venerable. How could a mere king deal with such an array? At this moment, another figure broke out of the Dream Immortal's palace. Han Fei slightly smiled. Other than Xia Zhiming and Yu Meng, the Dream Weaving Academy still had 2 kings, Feng Menglong and Chu Mengyan. Both of them had come out. Wouldn't the Dream Immortal's palace fall? The woman who appeared was Chu Mengyan. She yelled, "Who are you? How dare you break into the Dream Weaving Academy? All venerables of the Dream Weaving Academy, listen to my command. In 15 minutes, this king wants to see everyone shatter." Han Fei curled his lips. "Don't talk big." One of the jade slips in Han Fei's hand broke. Outside the ocean, Zhou Qin, Chen Guangjia, Shui Ran, and Xian Feng's expressions suddenly changed. Xian Feng yelled, "Which pirates, get ready to travel through the void. Everyone, get into battle mode and charge into the Dream Weaving Academy." Hearing this, Chen Guangjia immediately yelled, "Gale pirates, plunder the Dream Weaving Academy. This is our chance to get rich." Shui Ran commanded, "Everyone attack." Zhou Chen commanded, "Misfortune pirates, plunder the Dream Weaving Academy. Don't hurt anyone by accident." Swish, swish, swish. In the blink of an eye, a total of 12 ships had broken through the void and left the Dream Weaving Academy. The heavenly fire had been burning for 100 minutes. 1/3 of the arrays Han Fei had set up had been broken. At this speed, Han Fei's arrangements would be broken in less than 200 minutes. The corners of Han Fei's mouth curled up slightly, and he threw another jade slip into the void. The jade slip cracked, and an enormous spirit-gathering array that was 100,000 meters wide appeared above the Dream Weaving Academy. Feng Menglong and Chu Mengyan's expressions changed drastically. Such a large array couldn't be set up by anyone. If there was a single mistake, the array couldn't be completed. Feng Menglong yelled, "I'll break this array. You clean up the heavenly fire array." Feng Menglong dashed out, but the spirit-gathering array was reflected in the void and melted into the Dream Weaving Academy's city-guarding array. Because he was a spirit-gatherer, the city-guarding array wouldn't reject this kind of array that could accumulate spiritual energy. Therefore, the moment the spirit-gathering array was melted into the city-guarding array, it operated at full power. At the center, there seemed to be a power that was about to explode. Hiss! Feng Menglong was shocked. Who wants to destroy the Dream Weaving Academy? Rumble. After the spirit-gathering array appeared, it melted with the city-guarding array and began to explode. What could Feng Menglong do? He could only suppress this place with his Tao to prevent the terrifying explosion from hitting the Dream Immortal city. A huge firework 1,000 kilometers wide spread in the sky, blowing a huge hole in the Dream Weaving Academy's city-guarding array. Feng Menglong tore the void apart, trying to channel the power into the infinite void. However, to his astonishment, the remaining energy of the large spirit-gathering formation that had exploded had actually turned into thousands of small spirit-gathering formations, and at this moment, they were frantically absorbing the energy that originally belonged to the Great City Protecting Formation. Chu Mingyan's hundreds of clones were busy breaking the heavenly fire array and couldn't help. They tried to find the enemy while breaking the array. However, Chu Mingyan hadn't broken the heavenly fire array in less than 100 seconds. 12 pirate ships came out of the void. His, Feng Menglong and Chu Mingyan were both dumbfounded. The dream-weaving supremacies were also dumbfounded. The top 10 pirate groups? Attack the Dream-Weaving Academy? Were the top 10 pirate groups crazy? Did they want to start a war with the 36 immortal palaces? Ha! Chen Guangjia shouted, "Isn't this Feng Menglong? Are you busy? Come and fight me." Xian Feng said, "Chu Mingyan, if you don't want to hurt the civilians, come over here." As for Shui Ran and Zhou Qin, they stayed here. The 4 pirate groups, more than 400 supremacies, all flew away. Whoever got the resources of the Dream Weaving Academy could take them away as if they were injected with stimulants. On Han Fei's side, the illusions of mountains and rivers had already appeared. Luo Xiaobai and Xia Shaochan had already known the plan. Han Fei had even arranged the resource distribution map for them. They rushed into the Dream Immortals city and began to search for resources. And Han Fei had completely transformed into the appearance of Wang Yijin. Above the Dream Immortals city, somewhere in the sky, Han Fei drew a line in the void, and the gate of the Immortal Palace opened. The first update? Asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 1945. The reason why Han Fei chose Dream Weaving Sky was that, after evaluating its comprehensive strength, it was relatively weak in the inner area. This time, the Grand Purity Palace had invited the other immortal palaces to attack the Sword God's 4 palaces, and Dream Weaving Sky was one of them. Logically speaking, only Sha Zhimeng would be able to take this position. Otherwise, Feng Menglong and Chu Mingyan might not be able to pressure the Sword God's 4 palaces even if they both went. Of course, even so, Han Fei couldn't be sure that Dream Weaving Sky didn't have other strong masters. Some immortal palaces would announce to the outside that they had a few kings, but they would secretly hide 1 or 2 kings in case of emergencies. This was why Han Fei had invited 4 of the top 10 pirate groups. The moment Han Fei entered the Immortal Palace, he saw Zhou Chen and Shui Ran attack the Dream Fairy Palace. The location of the Dream Fairy Palace was equivalent to the location of the central holy city in the Yin-Yang sky. There must be an extraordinary setup in that place, and there must be a lot of resources stored there. Since Chen Guangjia and Xian Feng already had opponents, Zhou Chen and Shui Ran wouldn't just stand in the void and watch. Naturally, the Immortal Palace of Dreams became their target. With these 2 holding the Immortal Palaces back, Han Fei could naturally break into the Dream Fairy Palace. According to Han Fei's expectation, there would be danger here, but it shouldn't be too much. After all, if Sha Zhimeng wasn't here, as long as he destroyed the small world where the Immortal Palace was located, he could rob the resources inside, drag the Immortal Palace out, and trample on it. Han Fei broke the void and went in. But then he suddenly found himself in a place that he didn't expect. Fuck? It's starting already? Han Fei stood in the air, and he was now in the 100,000 mountains. Han Fei didn't underestimate the difficulty of breaking into the Dream Fairy Palace, but before he saw the Immortal Palace, he seemed to have fallen into an illusion. Swoosh! A black shadow flew over. Han Fei fixed his eyes on it and found it was the Sky Survey Golden Eagle. If this was the real 100,000 mountains, it wouldn't be a big deal, but this was fake. Moreover, before the Sky Survey Golden Eagle arrived, the murderous intent had already appeared. The Sky Survey Golden Eagle spread its wings, and 2 sharp golden blade auras came straight at him. See expansion realm power? Han Fei didn't blink, because he wasn't sure whether the power was real or illusory, but it didn't matter. So what if it was the power of the Sea Expansion Realm? Han Fei stretched out his hands and caught the 2 giant blade lights. Gotcha. But Han Fei felt that this power was real, because the Taoist aura contained in it was trying to impact his body. Since the attack was real, it meant that this was the defensive power of the Dreamweaver Celestial Palace, and not the power of the so-called Sky Surveying Golden Eagle. Han Fei didn't use the yin-yang divine eyes immediately. After all, he was now appearing as Wang Yijin. If he used the yin-yang divine eyes when he wasn't sure whether or not dream-weaving sky was present, then wouldn't Wang Yijin's identity be exposed? So, Han Fei closed his eyes and swallowed this illusion with the power of the 9 poison treasure silkworm. In fact, it shouldn't be difficult for Han Fei to break through this battle with the multitude navigator, but he wanted to test the power of the 9 poison treasure silkworm. Sure enough, when there was something wrong with the 100,000 mountains, Han Fei found a clue. And this clue was in the Divine Child Peak. No matter how strong the environment of dream-weaving sky was, it couldn't disguise the power of gods, so the 9 poison treasure silkworms swallowed a weak illusion. Han Fei grinned, and with a flash of golden light, the yin-yang reincarnation knife slashed out, and the entire Divine Child Peak collapsed. However, Han Fei's face suddenly changed. He thought that after the Divine Child Peak collapsed, the illusion would be gone. But who could have expected that the collapsed Divine Child Peak would collapse and recover, and that his yin-yang reincarnation knife couldn't cut through this illusion? It's impossible. Once there was an error in the illusion, it should have collapsed. How could the weird technique of dream-weaving sky be able to repair it? Han Fei tried to use the 9 poison treasure silkworm to swallow another illusion, but this time, the 9 poison treasure silkworm didn't respond. It shouldn't be. To the 9 venom treasure silkworm, all of these actions that confused one's soul were all poison. It could eat any kind of soul poison. This was clearly recorded in the jade slip that Huang Jie gave him. Unless the 9 poison treasure silkworm had fallen asleep. However, when Han Fei looked into the depths of his soul, the 9 poison treasure silkworm was still there, and its chubby body moved twice. It didn't look like it had fallen asleep at all. No, that was an illusion just now, but now it's a dream. Han Fei immediately understood. When the illusion and the dream merged, it was like a dream within a dream, which was even more difficult to figure out. How could ordinary people think of this? As a matter of fact, the Sky Survey Golden Eagle that had disappeared just now had returned. Not only did the Sky Survey Golden Eagles come, but Han Fei also saw mountain giants stand up from the depths of the mountains. The Giant King pointed his axe at Han Fei, the Beast King leaped over with his rod, and the heavenly crystal turned into its true form, a giant rock, and also attacked. Wang Han. Little Wang Han. Go to hell. Knowing that it was a dream, Han Fei had to find a way to wake up. He couldn't let the power of this dream affect his mind. However, when the Giant King and the others attacked, the giant axe suddenly shattered in the void. Han Fei was also stunned. What's going on? Then, the heavenly crystal's claw attack and the Beast King's Beast King art all dissipated in the void. Han Fei frowned and found that the 9 poison treasure silkworm continued to devour. Han Fei couldn't help but be shocked. The dream weaver could directly attack the soul in a dream. This strange power was really terrifying. Fortunately, this threatening power was regarded by the 9 poison treasure silkworm as soul poison, so it directly tore it up and swallowed it. Although the 9 poison treasure silkworm had the ability to swallow soul poison, it certainly couldn't go on like this. This was the Divine Palace, and the power here could definitely easily make the 9 poison treasure silkworm fall asleep. Therefore, Han Fei immediately shouted coldly and directly used the power of his soul to stimulate his qi and blood. When his qi and blood rose, Han Fei roared and transformed into a clone with his essence blood. Swish, swish, swish. He only saw Wang Yijin one after another appearing in this place. He didn't know where this place was. Many of the doppelgangers fell into a deep slumber in an instant, but there were also some doppelgangers who instantly discovered that their true bodies were standing on a piece of land. Some clones saw a palace shrouded in mist. All of a sudden, thousands of clones appeared, some activating the nautical multitude, and some activating the infinity water. The infinity water turned into a sword shadow in the void, cutting straight through the mist. Rumble, a terrifying explosion swept across the entire divine palace. God knew how many weird psychedelic arrays it had to crush. Swished Han Fei's thousands of projections all returned in an instant. No matter what kind of dream-weaving power the dream weaver had, It was still a kind of energy, an application of a kind of great Tao. These illusions were shattered, and the world seemed to be restored to clarity. In the violent power, Han Fei's body was as steady as a rock. As he slowly opened his eyes, he saw what this so-called Dream Weaver Divine Palace looked like. He saw that this place was shrouded in mist, and in the mist, a palace that seemed to be made of white mist stood on the land of the Divine Palace. Right in front of the palace, two monsters 100 meters tall, twisted like nightmares, suddenly lunged at him. Han Fei felt the stinging of his mind, only to find that the raging storm couldn't shake the mist palace or the two monsters. He looked down at his feet and the sky, and reached out to feel the remaining power of the infinity water in the void. Han Fei heaved a sigh. Nothing new. The third level of illusion. When Han Fei was about to kill the two monsters with the heavenly god stab, he suddenly heard the Emperor Sparrow's voice in his head. Let me do it. Too much soul filth has been accumulated here, and it's become a nightmare. If little black and little white don't come out, you'll be trapped in an infinite illusion. Huh? A nightmare? Seeing that the Emperor Sparrow took the initiative to fight, Han Fei didn't have to worry about it. The center of his eyebrows flashed, and a giant black eagle spread its wings in the sky. The Emperor Sparrow's eyes were bloodshot, and the void behind him was broken. A giant claw broke through the void with boundless black mist. The entire small world of dream-weaving sky was instantly full of cracks. It was just a thing that looked like a giant black claw, but even Han Fei was shocked by its pressure. What's that? The Emperor Sparrow said, the Eye of Disaster, the arrival of the extraterrestrial demon. Han Fei was speechless. Is this the power of a half-king realm cultivator? The extraterrestrial demon couldn't even extend one of its claws. It was obvious how powerful it was. So, this was the correct way to use the Eye of Disaster? But it turned out that the Emperor Sparrow didn't need to extend its claws at all, because the nightmare couldn't move at all under the threat of the giant claw. The enormous body was smashed into pieces by the extraterrestrial demon lord with one slap. Phew, the sound of someone inhaling could be heard coming from the hole in the void. Then the entire fairyland-like space shattered like glass. Like a storm, a vast expanse of dense fog continuously drilled into the hole in the void. At this moment, the real appearance of dream-weaving sky finally appeared in front of Han Fei. There was a house on a mountain that was 1,000 meters high, but it couldn't be called a palace at all. At this moment, in front of the house, a woman with blood all over her chest was looking at the extraterrestrial demon's claw in surprise. The woman looked awful, and she even panted a little. Is this a real demon? Chapter 1946. Even Han Fei himself was dumbfounded. Although the Emperor Sparrow always talked about heavenly demons and heavenly demons, who knew what heavenly demons looked like? Now that he saw it, he realized that this slap could probably kill a king. However, Han Fei felt that not all heavenly demons were so strong. At least the one that descended with the heavenly Tao Dharma I could be counted as a heavenly demon, right? Dreamweaver's strange dreamscape was almost completely sucked dry. However, the Emperor Sparrow might not be strong enough to completely summon this so-called heavenly demon, so it withdrew its claws and sealed the void after Dream Sky sucked in a bunch of weird smoke. However, as soon as the heavenly demon returned, the Emperor Sparrow said, I'm going to use this to expand my sea. What? Han Fei was dumbfounded. You've already expanded your sea? What did you do? You haven't done anything yet, have you? You've already expanded your sea after coming out every 8 to 10 years? Han Fei was dumbfounded. Han Fei was dumbfounded, and so was the woman. The woman yelled, What do you think the dream sky is? Do you think you can do whatever you want when our king isn't here? Han Fei was taken aback. You're not Dream Sky? The woman snorted. I'm Wan Qingling. Wang Yijin, since you're here, stay. I'd like to see if you can kill me with a single strike. Mist rose from beneath Wan Qingling's feet, and a 1,000-meter-tall figure condensed from mist appeared behind Wan Qingling. It looked like a Dharma body, but it was way too big. Wan Qingling stood proudly in the void and landed on the figure's chest. She made a hand seal and chanted, Dream sky opening, Tao aura descends from the heavens. I will use my body to conquer the heavens. The 1,000-meter-tall figure raised a huge sword that contained mystic enlightenment power. Han Fei sensed the immortal spiritual qi. Han Fei couldn't help but gasp. How could there be someone in the dream sky who could create something out of nothing like him? Wan Qingling was only at the Pioneer Sea state, but her body was burning as if she were sacrificing herself for the attack of the heaven-opening state. Han Fei's face turned pale with fright. Without hesitation, he held the shattered sword. The immortal spirit qi and fiendish qi began to interweave rapidly. The fiendish immortal qi condensed into a sword and flew towards the sword shadow. Han Fei yelled, "Emperor Sparrow, come back!" However, the Emperor Sparrow chirped and flew up, shouting, "Emperor Sparrow, come back!" Rumble, lightning, and tribulation clouds roiled in the area of 50,000 kilometers around Dreamweaver sky, causing rumbling thunder and rolling tribulation clouds. The heavenly tribulation had drained nearly half of the power of the huge sword formed from the fog. Han Fei's eyelids twitched. You can do that? Is the Emperor Sparrow competing with Wan for Tao Sparrow? Wan Qingling didn't expect such a situation to occur. She had sacrificed her physical body to unleash an all-out attack, but half of her power had been snatched away by a half-step monarch realm bird. Seeing this, Han Fei immediately directed the infinity water to the Emperor Sparrow, forming a water barrier that protected the Emperor Sparrow behind it. As for Han Fei himself, he stretched out 2 fingers and the Tao Convergence sword burst out. In midair, the baleful immortal and the huge sword clashed, and a huge ripple that spanned thousands of miles spread out in Dreamweaver sky. Buzz, the ripples swept across the entire small world where the Divine Palace was, and Han Fei was slightly frightened. He had underestimated the powerhouses of Dreamweaver. She wasn't even Sha Jimeng, yet she was able to unleash the power of Split the Heavens. If not for the fact that half of her strength had been stolen, she would have been severely injured. No wonder it almost became a great omen. So it was her. The terrifying energy swept over, but in front of Han Fei, the Tao Convergence sword was not so weak that it couldn't even block the energy ripples. Therefore, the place where Han Fei was not injured at all. On the D Sparrow's side, the infinity water transformed into a spiral cone and blocked in front of the D Sparrow. Similarly, it withstood the remaining force. However, the collision of power comparable to the heaven-splitting stage had indeed destroyed the dream-weaving immortal palace's small world power. Originally, this small world was a spatial rift. If there was a rift, there would be an entrance, and the entrance was the weakest. After being hit by such a force, it was immediately filled with energy. After 3 seconds, the void was torn apart, and the remaining power finally rushed out. Outside the dream immortal city, in the sky, Feng Menglong and Chu Mengyan were fighting fiercely. Suddenly, their expressions changed, and they looked at the sky above Dreamweaver sky in horror. Above the sky, the space was distorted like a bubble that was twisting irregularly. Crack! When a beam of light shot into the sky, the entire sky was illuminated by this beam of light. Chen Guangjia was shocked. Was it really that powerful inside? How was it already like this? Xian Feng frowned. Han Fei should be fine, right? Since he had come to fight Dreamweaver Sky, he should be very confident. As for Shui Ran and Zhou Qin, who were attacking the Dream Immortal Palace, their expressions changed drastically. Fortunately, they didn't have to attack the Dream Immortal Palace. Just a bit of its power was enough to cause such a scene. How exaggerated would the battle be? Xia Xiaochan and Luo Xiaobai, who were plundering, were also shocked. Zhang Xuanyu said, "What's going on? Why does it look like someone's king's tribulation has arrived?" Lu Renkuang said, "It can't be the king's tribulation, right? Look at the energy explosion. It even poked a hole in the sky. Who's passing the king's tribulation like this?" However, Xia Xiaochan said, "Idiot, that's a sign of the king's tribulation." However, in the Divine Palace, there are other forces erupting besides the king's tribulation. Luo Xiaobai said, "Cut the crap. Han Fei has been preparing for this operation for months. Let's take the opportunity to grab more resources. At this moment, the Dream Immortal City was in a mess. Thousands of venerables were fighting in the sky. But most people in the Dream Immortal City could only look at the sky. God knew what was going on. Anyway, it felt like the end of the world was coming. Oh, to be precise, the end of the world had already come. On the Divine Palace, the small world was full of cracks, but it was still far from breaking. At this moment, Wan Qingling had not died. Otherwise, how could Han Fei not know the crack of the heavenly law? But at this time, Han Fei couldn't care too much. There was no one else in this divine palace. As long as he killed Wan Qingling, who would know that Wang Yijian was Han Fei? Fuse. When the yin-yang divine eyes appeared, the void lines turned into countless soul thorns, shuttling back and forth. Finally, Han Fei locked on a drop of water attached to the gravel of the mountain. In fact, it was not a drop of water, but essence blood. Seeing that it was locked on, the drop of water was about to transform into a human being, but she underestimated Han Fei's speed. With a flash of golden light, Han Fei had already rushed to her. Immediately, the void lines locked on Wan Qingling, who had only turned into a half-human figure. The 100-beast soul-devouring roar suppressed Wan Qingling, and Han Fei quickly controlled her soul with the void lines. Wan Qingling, who was already weak, was controlled by the void lines in the end. However, even so, Han Fei was still bleeding from his 7 orifices. This person's strength was much stronger than he had imagined. Han Fei estimated that according to the ranking of the Pioneer Sea realm that Han Xian had concealed for himself, this person was at least in the top 20. However, no matter how strong she was, what could she do if she was controlled by Han Fei? With a thought from Han Fei, Wan Qingling appeared in the collapsed house. Sha Zhiming trusted Wan Qingling to guard the dream-weaving celestial palace. Therefore, Han Fei used Wan Qingling to open the door of the treasure in the mountain. The mountain of the dream-weaving celestial palace exploded, and Han Fei's big hand grabbed from inside. Countless resources were pulled into the sun-moon shell by Han Fei. After taking one, Han Fei threw it to DK and said, "Don't worry and use it. There are plenty of resources." DK responded, "Leave this small world." Han Fei said, "Wait a moment. Let me plunder these resources first. Wait a moment." DK. After about 10 minutes, DK couldn't help but say, "Hurry up, the heavenly tribulation outside is almost ready." Han Fei took a look and said, "Okay, let's go out now." Han Fei used the draw technique and flattened the broken mountain of the dream-weaving celestial palace. Immediately, the illusion of mountains and rivers appeared. Then, the whole mountain was taken by Han Fei. There were still some resources inside the immortal palace that he didn't have time to collect. He could only sigh and control Wan Qingling to control the array. With a bang, the dilapidated immortal palace stumbled out of the space gap. When the immortal palace appeared in the sky of dream-weaving sky, Han Fei grabbed Wan Qingling and fled, leaving the place to D. Quebec. At this point, Wan Qingling was useless. It was time to die. Rumble. In the sky, apart from the dense black clouds and rolling heavenly tribulation, there was also a bright red lightning mark. Under the black clouds, blood rained all over the sky. Wan Qingling, the hidden master of the dream-weaving celestial palace, had died. And Han Fei, who was also Wang Yijian in other people's eyes, was standing proudly in the sky with his hands behind his back. Zhou Chen's eyelids twitched. Luckily, he didn't challenge Han Fei before. Look at his posture. Wang Yijian killed another king in the blink of an eye. Chen Guangjia couldn't help but think, this is so cool. After killing a king, he's still so calm. How enviable. But they didn't know that Han Fei was actually absorbing Wan Qingling's ownerless soul. The 3rd chapter? Ask for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 1947. The death of a king meant infinite vitality and ownerless souls for Han Fei. In particular, Wan Qingling was probably in the top 20 of the Pioneer Sea list. The vitality and soul power he could provide were equal to that of 2 ordinary kings. Rumble. At this moment, Han Fei saw a purple heavenly tribulation falling right at the Emperor Sparrow. The Emperor Sparrow looked like a bird-shaped demon, almost covered in black fog. It spread its wings at the heavenly tribulation and swallowed it. In the eyes of others, it was like a black fog storm was rising above the palace. The heavenly tribulation was absorbed by the storm and flashed purple light from time to time. Han Fei didn't know how to help the Emperor Sparrow. It seemed that the guy didn't need his help at all. He vaguely remembered the scene when the Emperor Sparrow passed the heavenly tribulation last time. It swallowed 6 lightning bolts one by one. That scene was much more powerful than when he passed the heavenly tribulation. Han Fei activated the Gemini Divine Technique. The black fog body opened a void crack and went into Wan Qingling's origin sea. The white fog body stayed outside to protect the Emperor Sparrow. When Han Fei went into Wan Qingling's origin sea, he was stunned. He thought that Wan Qingling's origin sea would be the same as other people's origin sea, filled with mist. However, it seemed that it was not the case. Wan Qingling's origin sea was even more than 2,000 kilometers larger than his, and there was no fog here. Han Fei saw a land in the sea with a radius of more than 30,000 kilometers. There was a town on the land that spanned more than 6,000 kilometers. The buildings in the town were very exquisite, as if there were people living here. Han Fei walked into a random house curiously, only to find that this house had everything he needed, including daily necessities, food, furnishings, and utensils. Except that there was no one here. This house was completely suitable for a family. At this moment, the demon purification pot had begun to absorb the chaotic air here. But Han Fei was very curious about Wan Qingling's origin sea, so he began to wander in this city. From the shops along the street to the residences, to the public facilities, to the greenery, it was exactly the same as reality. After visiting dozens of houses, Han Fei found that the living facilities in them were also different. It seemed that different families lived here. Han Fei couldn't help but say, "Old Yuan, I know why the origin sea creates a real environment. But why was there not a single person here? Logically speaking, she can just randomly grab some people from the real world and bring them in, right?" The old turtle said, "Of course not. The origin sea should have been created by your origin sea. Although living beings from the outside world can come in, they don't belong to your origin sea, and they aren't compatible with your origin sea. Therefore, apart from letting them stay in your origin sea, there's actually no meaning to it." "I see." No wonder Han Fei saw that this city had been built. The spiritual energy here was abundant, the earth veins were not bad, and the chaotic qi shouldn't be weak, but there was no one living here. However, Wan Qingling's origin sea gave Han Fei a direction. Was creating creatures the direction of the development of the origin sea? According to what the old tortoise said, the creatures of this world needed to be created themselves. They needed to be compatible with their own sea of origin. Although his origin sea was like an immortal realm, and all sorts of good things were thrown into it, it was still lacking in life, just like Wan Qingling. In his huge territory, there were only little black, little white, and the 9-tailed mantis shrimp. They swam back and forth in the entire river of spiritual energy every day. However, if a creature could be born in the origin sea, did it mean that the origin sea had undergone a qualitative change? Before Han Fei asked, the old turtle said, "The birth of a creature in the origin sea is a sign of the origin sea. But don't think too much. The creature I'm talking about is not a race like yours. That's too demanding. These creatures are actually very ordinary at the beginning and haven't reached the mark of a powerful race." The sign of the origin sea is the birth of a creature in the origin sea? Han Fei couldn't help but frown. He suddenly had a strange feeling. In other words, in the origin sea, a cultivator was like the Lord of creation, who could become the only god of their own world. If this was how the world came to be, then where did the so-called savage abyss, the current chaotic sea, and the thousands of races in the sea come from? Could it be that they were created by a certain creature? As if knowing that Han Fei would think too much, the old turtle said, "Don't think too much. Someone once calculated that our existence was almost impossible to be created. There are thousands of races, hundreds of millions of miles of vast territory, and countless inventions and creations. If we are really creatures born in someone else's body, how powerful must the creature who created us be? Han Fei scoffed. You are not that strong. How do you know? The old turtle said, the world we exist in is too complicated, from the birth of the great Tao of heaven and earth to the advancement of the power level, and then to the birth and evolution of countless lives. Han Fei agreed with him. Maybe it was just a cultivator's spontaneous attempt to create a world. It was just a conjecture on the road of cultivation. Except for this empty city, Han Fei didn't find any other special places, but Wan Qingling's origin sea was indeed quite large. Soon, Han Fei found where Wan Qingling stored her resources. However, these resources were less than he thought, less than 500 million ultra-quality spiritual stones in total. Maybe most of the resources were used to shape this coastal area. However, looking at the origin sea that was slowly beginning to fog, Han Fei knew that the chaotic energy here was rapidly decreasing. The demon purification pot was quite powerful. He wondered how much chaotic energy it could bring him this time. After observing Wan Qingling's origin sea for a while, about a quarter of an hour passed. The demon purification pot finally absorbed enough. To Han Fei's surprise, this time, it directly harvested more than 8,000 strands of chaotic energy. Han Fei couldn't help but be shocked. This was the largest amount of chaotic energy he had ever obtained in one go. It could be described as a massive amount of it. Even when Gongzhan and Li Chaofeng combined didn't have as much chaotic energy as Wan Qingling. It could be seen how much chaotic energy was contained in Wan Qingling's origin sea. When Han Fei fused them into one, he was still extremely shocked. This Wan Qingling was not Xia Zhiming yet. If her foundation was so deep, what about Xia Zhiming? Han Fei couldn't help but think that maybe it was a good thing that Xia Zhiming wasn't here this time. From the power that Wan Qingling displayed, she was actually very strong. If Xia Zhiming was here, and this was her immortal palace, Han Fei might not be able to defeat her. Outside the Sword God Palace, hundreds of large ships were flying in the sky, and dozens of geniuses were fighting a life-and-death battle 10,000 kilometers away. Behind them, on Dreamweaver Sky's ship, there was a woman in a white gauze dress holding a brush that was as tall as a person, and her expression changed drastically. Xia Zhiming suddenly stood up, and her aura couldn't help but erupt. Many people were surprised. The venerables asked, "Palace Master, what's wrong?" A young woman was stunned. "Teacher, what happened?" "Palace Master Dream, I can sense that your aura is unstable." "What happened?" A voice could be heard even from thousands of kilometers away. Xia Zhiming's expression was ugly. "Elder He, please forgive me. I can't participate in this battle. Something happened to me." Just as the two finished their battle, a crack appeared in the heavenly Tao. The expressions of the Grand Pure Palace, the Golden Crow Palace, and the Dragon Subduing Palace all changed drastically. Another king had fallen? From Xia Zhiming's reaction, it seemed that there was something wrong with Dream Sky. On the Grand Pure Palace's ship, an old man said, "Ji Xian, accompany Palace Master Dream Sky." Ancestor. While Xia Zhiming was rushing back, the Emperor Sparrow had already gone through 6 heavenly tribulations. He had to admit that the Emperor Sparrow's heavenly tribulation was stronger than his. Han Fei had always thought that his heavenly tribulation was already very terrifying, but after seeing the Emperor Sparrow's heavenly tribulation, he realized that the heavenly tribulation of a true powerhouse could be completely purple. After the Emperor Sparrow swallowed 6 heavenly tribulations, its body seemed to be unable to take it anymore. Thus, it devoured a vast amount of resources in the depths of the Immortal Palace. When the 7th heavenly tribulation descended, Han Fei didn't know how to describe it. He saw a fire phoenix descending from the sky and pouncing toward the Emperor Sparrow. The 2 bird silhouettes were like 2 powerful primordial creatures, fighting each other amidst the thunder, fire, and black smoke. Anyway, Han Fei had never encountered such a situation before. This heavenly tribulation was probably not easy to deal with. As expected, after experiencing this heavenly tribulation, Han Fei could clearly feel that the Emperor Sparrow's arrogant black flames had weakened a lot. However, The Emperor's sparrow wasn't stupid. It released all the resources that Han Fei had thrown at it and surrounded its body. From within the immortal palace, there was also a vast amount of energy spiraling up to protect its body. The eighth heavenly tribulation was attacked by the shadow of a dragon. It was also another fierce battle. Anyway, even Han Fei couldn't see what was going on. First, there was a phoenix, then there was a dragon. The Emperor's sparrow was just going through a heavenly tribulation. Why were there so many strange heavenly tribulations? As for the Emperor Sparrow's heavenly tribulation, Han Fei really couldn't help it at all. He even felt that the Emperor Sparrow was a freakishly talented spiritual beast. It had come with its previous life's memories and was just staying with him for a while. As expected, although the first heavenly tribulation looked terrifying, it was normal after the ninth heavenly tribulation. Han Fei secretly activated his yin-yang divine eye and saw that there seemed to be a black shadow in the purplish-red heavenly tribulation. It was being torn apart and swallowed by the Emperor Sparrow. Oh my, is that a heavenly demon? You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.